Well, it's 7 o'clock, so let's start. Mr. Williams, I'm sure will be here. I did talk to him earlier, and I know that he's going to be here. And I'm sure he knows the way to pick. So now, earlier today, I had sent everybody on the committee copies of the minutes, and I requested that any changes be made and emailed back, and I did not receive any, so am I to assume that nobody found any issue with the minutes as the way they were recorded?
I found one spelling thing, that's all. It's not worth the consideration. I understand spelling things.
Well, where did you find it? We'll fix it.
It is the first page,
Good.
third paragraph.
Okay,
Pete Olson moved that the agenda be amended instead of they.
okay,
And the rest of it, I didn't find any problem with.
okay, so anybody?
Oh, you know, I did find that motion that we made to the mission statement, and Joe seconded the first one, does not appear in this.
Was that where I left
Well,
the quotes?
Do I?
Where I put just the quotes?
No,
'cause
I
left-
took care of that. Hi there.
Hey, how you doing? Bob Williams, how are you, sir?
Good.
Hey, Joe, how you doing? Good. See you tomorrow. We got a cabin together. Chica. Oh, yeah.
I know we really.
Let me sit there, all right?
I was the chair already. So you can, whichever one you prefer.
All right, thank you. I don't bite, Bob. You don't bite, Ted?
Okay, there was some issue with the minutes with the mission statement. But I went back and I played that over and over until I got every word exactly right. So the mission statement as it appears is exactly the way it was spoken to me during the last meeting.
And where is it?
Maybe her copy did yours just have quotes? Empty quotes?
No, I sent all of them.
Oh, maybe I missed the last one then.
You missed the
sent-
last what?
I got,
No,
I got one about 4:30 or so, where you were requesting.
Yeah.
Did you send out corrections?
No, not any corrections.
Okay.
That was the minutes requesting that everybody read them over and make
Okay.
them.
So you think the mission statement was, I mean, really our mission statement was quite befuddled.
Actually, the way that I got it, let me find it here. I went through the tape, it's at 10 minutes and 16 seconds on that video.
Uh-huh.
And it only takes us about 30 minutes to come to a vote on
And
it.
then
So
we
there was a lot of
discuss it.
discussion. So the way that I have it in here, okay, to agree upon policies and procedures that benefit the community in both residential and commercial properties, recognizing that there may be additional criteria in residential areas.
Right.
Okay? And I know that that's precise because I went over and over and over.
Okay, so you have it, is it in these minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. I guess I just missed them.
It begins the very last paragraph of the first page and rolls over into
Okay.
the next page.
Oh, wait a minute. Okay, gotcha.
Okay? So with the exception of that spelling error, is there anything else? Excuse me?
I was just trying to write it down.
Oh, okay.
Nope.
Okay, so somebody want to make a motion to?
I'll take a motion that we accept the minutes as correct.
Okay.
Second.
Second, okay, we have a motion on the floor by Brad, seconded by Joe, that we accept the minutes as corrected. Any other comment? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, motion carried. And so also I had sent the agenda, and so is there any I would like to ask that we review and approve those as they are, or in case anybody thinks anything different. I would like to say that I'm going to give the public and Mr. Williams all the time that they want to deal with the septic issues. We created a pretty aggressive itinerary here for tonight, but we'll see how time permits based upon Mr. Williams' presentation and the question and answers from the public. So with that, would anybody want to recommend that we approve the agenda or make any changes?
I make a motion that we approve the agenda as stated.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, so there is a motion on the floor by Gwen, seconded by Joe, that we approve the agenda as presented. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, motion carried. So at this time, I think that what we will do is to introduce Mr. Bob Williams and let him talk a little bit about himself. He has a presentation for us, and then we will open up the floor to public comments and questions. So,
Okay.
Mr. Williams,
Thank
thank
you.
you very much for
Appreciate it.
coming, sir.
I was invited at the request of John Wise to come up and basically talk about septic systems and answer your questions. I'm a professional engineer. I've got over 45 years' experience. And go back in Pitkin quite a few years. I designed a complete sewage system for Pitkin back in the 70s. We got a 95% grant, $300 a month tap fees, or $300 tap fees, and $30 a month user fees. The citizens voted it down. So you have an issue today in Pitkin, because if that had happened, we wouldn't have had an issue. But that's foresight, and now in this market, there is no money available for any help outside in government. They're just not putting money to help communities anymore. So where I'm going to start is I want to talk a little bit about treatment concepts of septic, regulations, and then design and performance. And in Pitkin, I have designed a lot of systems, so I know the area very well, so I'm not speaking kind of out of pocket here. I've worked with Mr. Sharpton and now Rand on a lot of systems up here, and have developed quite a program of requirements that I go through. So first I want to talk about is, we now call them OWTS, on-site wastewater treatment systems. They used to be individual sewage treatment systems. Before that, they were septic systems. So our technology and terms are changing as the years go on here. And the whole process of septic tanks is there's over 40 million people in the United States that have septic systems. They work, they're effective, they accomplish 45% of the treatment can happen in that septic tank if it's designed and operated properly. The remaining treatment goes through the soil, which we'll talk about in a little bit. They are absolutely the most cost-effective way of treating sewage in rural communities, small areas. They're very effective. They work. The septic tank is used to collect your waste from your house. Everything you go down the toilet, the sink, the dishwasher goes to your septic tank. And that some of the problems that can develop with that are different products you use in your house. With phosphorus, nitrates, they affect the little critters that live in there to eat the sewage bacteria or to develop the bacteria. The systems that septic tank does is it provides primary treatment only. And you will see in the next 4 years probably, you will notice the state moving to tertiary, third level treatment. It's going to mean pumps, it's going to mean filters, and plus I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. The pre-treatment in a septic tank is the heart of it. That's where the treatment takes place. And we'll talk about sizing a little. I'm not going to get into technical. We'll talk about sizing, operation, maintenance, what have you. And you know what? One of the worst things about septic systems? Out of sight and out of mind. People don't pay attention to them. They flush their toilet, goes down, oh, it's gone. Well, it is impacting our environment, which we'll discuss why and how that is. The septic systems work on three principles. They have three levels of bacteria in them. On the top layer is what we call aerobic bacteria lives. Those are good bugs. They live in the presence of oxygen, and they serve the purpose of eating some of the sludge, but most important, dealing with the floating scum, the greases that you get into, what have you. Then the next level in the septic tank is the center clear zone level. That's areas that has the bad stuff settled up, come down. In that zone lives facultative bacteria. That's bacteria that lives with and without oxygen. They're able to go both ways. Then the nuisance one, the one that smells, is anaerobic bacteria. It's in the bottom of the tank. And that's where sludge levels can be affect that. Dead sludge can affect that. And we'll talk a little bit more about seasonal use and dead sludge and why septic tanks don't work a lot in areas like this. One thing, that the growth and effectiveness of these critters or bugs is greatly affected by toxic chemicals and cleaners. Gasoline. Quickest way in the world to kill a septic system is put gas down the drain. Kill every bug in it. Other ways are detergents, fats, lots of fats and oils coming out. Kitchens, commercial kitchens are absolutely awful for septic systems. I designed one at Lake City at the Lake Fork Fishing Club. And that restaurant used to be up there, a real good, fancy restaurant, and it totally failed. They put a brand new system in. The owner, in their wisdom, disconnected the main grease trap. The system failed in 2 years. Totally failed. Greases are awful and they need to be controlled. Fortunately, you don't have a lot of cooking operations in Pitkin. The little restaurant's now closed, but they're a problem. Another one is high hydraulic loading. Hydraulic is flows greater than the system is designed to handle. Those are all things that cause that septic tank to fail. And you need to take, there's lists of things that should, every homeowner with a septic tank should know these products not to put down your toilets. There's zincs, magnesiums, ammonium sulfates, a lot of these, and they're in soaps. You need to watch. You need a user-friendly organic type soap. Really helps. And there's a lot of literature, writings on this that are out there that I could probably help Rand get them and disseminate them. So that's the basic thing. Well, we're going to talk about the absorption field in a minute. But now we have a brand new critter out there. It's called Regulation 43. And it is a bearcat. We had to all relearn the regulations for it. It was put out by the state of Colorado last year. And each community is responsible for implementing this regulation. Town of Pitkin did adopt this regulation. Gunnison County adopted it, and in all their wisdom, they increased it all over the place. They made it much, much more stringent than the state has. Pitkin elected not to. Correct, Rand? You just adopted it per se?
Oh, we're working on it.
You're working on it, okay?
James is
Yeah.
writing our part into it.
Okay, so, but the state, you're activated with the state on this, right?
Yeah.
That's the main thing, because otherwise you're in violation. You get fined at $5,000 a day on it. They've given this to the authorities, or to the local town to implement. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. In the back of this, and I've actually printed out, I've made 15 copies that I'd like people to look at. It's what the town is responsible to implement and guide and regulate. 4 or 5 simple little pages. The state has put this in now. The next go around, which will be in this 4 to 5 years, is going to require testing yearly of every septic system in the state of Colorado. It's around the corner, I'm going to warn you. It'll mean a lot of these fields are gonna have to be replaced because you're gonna have to be able to go underneath them and sample. And we built in to the systems I do, this monitoring or this capability to sample future. It'll come from a test after you go through the sand or the natural ground. Pitkin is a very complex little community. There's lots of old systems, components out there. I know where there's an old wooden septic tank. They're all over. And I think that between Russ and yourself, a lot of this is getting identified now. But it's still a real problem. They're old, they're not treating properly, and don't even know where they're at, some of them. The Pitkin, is it 3 or 4 lots? I don't recall what you guys.
9,000.
9,000.
That's what I thought.
Close to 3.
3 lots. The state of Colorado minimum is 1 acre. You realize what an impact that is? That means you could put 13 systems per acre, where the state allows 1. That's how overcrowded and potential for problem there is in Pitkin. Another issue in Pitkin is your seasonal use. People say, oh gosh, it's not hurting anything. Well, it is. Seasonal use is not a good critter for a septic system. And the reason it isn't is your bacteria dies in the winter. People will use bugs to try to get it, dog food, molasses, buttermilk, to try to get those critters growing. It takes anywhere from 45 to 60 days. Once you start using your systems to get your critters to where they're treating. So what happens with a seasonal system? You move in 30 to 40, 60 days, it starts working, and you leave in 30 more days. You don't discharge anymore, your septic tank becomes totally dormant. It's not doing its treating. It's a flow-through system where you're simply putting sludge that's not treated into the groundwater, into the ground. One that's kind of interesting is Gunnison County, I think most of you probably, they refuse to deal with Pitkin. They don't want anything to do with it. They think there's way too much liability up here. So they forced it back on the town. It used to be that they were monitoring this up here, but they finally said there's just too many potential problems. The responsibility, and that's really why I'm here, it rests on the shoulders of your town trustees. It's their responsibility. It's that they took it over from the county, so it is now their responsibility. But not only them, it's yours and it's mine. As an engineer, part of our obligation is we have to look out, number one, for the public health, safety, and welfare, whether it's a building, a bridge, a septic system, water system. So that's important. It's your job also to take care of this water up here, this environment. You need to protect your streams up here and groundwater. And a term that John used, I really liked it. First time I've heard water is born in this area. And it is. You're at the headwaters of Colorado's water in a little community like there's nobody else. There's a few up above you. There's not much. It's Pitkin, and you need to protect that water, and you need to do everything personally and help your trustees in protecting the water, and help us engineers as we're designing here to help you. There's going to be problems in Pitkin. I'm just warning you this. I've heard of some, but I could not confirm any bad tests up here. I called Dale Picard. There were some upstream of Pitkin that were tested. He doesn't know whether it was a bad sample, and they never came back. They tested for fecal coliform, which is human or animal
Are you
origination.
talking in wells or in the surface water?
In the wells, upstream someplace. And I don't know if the surface water up here has been tested recently and sampled through it. You can't just do random. You need to sample over a year or two and have a sequence that you test with. You don't have a lot of cattle upstream, so that does help it here. There's going to be a day you're going to be forced into a public system here. It's coming. I doubt if I'm going to see it, and some of it you won't, but it's going to happen. There's just too many people in a small area. So the way you gotta address it now and try to prevent that maybe from happening is to do everything as right and as proper as you can as a community. The first step in this whole process that starts is a site evaluation. And I now require every site that I do up here, there is a full-scale survey. I know the boundaries, I know the property lines, I know where the buildings are, I know where all adjacent wells are, where the neighbors' septic systems are, ditches, rivers, all of that impacts it. And it comes back in the first criteria is setbacks. The state has 20, 30, 40 setback requirements. The ones that are most important to you in this area, setback to ditches, wells, and river. Those are, state is 50 feet from the rivers. Gunnison County's adopted 100. Wells, it's 100, and there's no exception to wells, and I will not design one that is closer than 100 feet unless we encase the well down to get a separation on the diagonal of 100 feet. And the state does allow that. We had one that we had to do this on. Septic tanks consist of a number of issues, and that's why it's important that some of these old septic tanks be replaced. The configuration is very important in having two compartments in one tank. They need to be, the first tank needs to be longer than it is wide for the path. So you get the sewage as it flows through, it settles down, has a path. If it's square, you'll get plug circulation or plug flow going through. The state now has mandated that every septic system in the state of Colorado be watertight tested on the site now. And they have to be a certified tank manufactured by the state of Colorado. A lot of the fiberglass ones are no longer allowed. They're not passing the test. So you have to go through a water tightness test, and that is a very important one. The next element in this is the inlets. You need an inlet that doesn't just flow in, it flows and it drops down below your scum level. So otherwise, you move that scum level straight to your field. Then on the outlet, the same thing has to happen. You have to have a pipe or a device that you're drawing from our clear liquid zone in that tank. And the new tanks are designed that way. Some of these old ones out here, I know are one compartment. Who knows? We did actually find one that was really convenient up here. They'd actually disconnected the drain pipe and just put it down in the ground on a gray water tank. Yeah, what people will do, but anyway. So the shape, the inlets, compartmentalization, we talked a little bit about that. Water tightness is a very, very important issue. You're in a lot up here in high groundwater. So that tank has to be watertight. And if it's not watertight, it'll allow, without water, in water, it has the potential of infiltration in from groundwater and exfiltration out of the tank directly to your water system. And excessive infiltration into a tank can cause the greases, the solids, to wash right out the tank to your field. So it's very important they're watertight. They're also the hydraulic overloading. Now you're getting into hydraulic overloading in a tank when it's infiltrating because it's sending all that stuff out to your absorption field. The other one, when high groundwater is not a problem, we have the opposite. We have exfiltration out of that tank into the soil, and that's a high content of fecal coliform. A septic tank will have in the order of 10 million fecal counts of fecal coliform per liter. High concentration. Very high because that's what they're doing. They're living there. So we need to make sure that they're not leaking. And I think that's something that the town ought to implement as a test to prove this. And there are tests and ways it can be done. I've printed some stuff out on that I'm going to pass out. So that can highly potential of groundwater contamination, which means potential contamination of your wells.
Which is cholera.
That's correct. A lot of different things. Another one in high groundwater is buoyancy. I've actually been to sites where concrete tanks have popped out of the ground. They pump them, they're not buoyant, and so they pop right out of the ground. So all of the systems that I do in Pitkin, we put a stainless steel tie over the top of the tank down to dead men, so that when that's pumped, it can't come out of the ground. Monitoring of those tanks is critical. And the town has a pretty good program. It can be improved on, but they do to monitor those tanks to make sure that it's going to be up. There's been a lot of studies. One was done in 1993 that the microbiological activity that is optimum in a tank takes 3 years to develop. So by your seasonal nature, you never really have an effective septic tank, ever. You can't have it. It doesn't have the critter growth in it that's right. Regulation 43 comes in and establishes and requires gallons per minute to be used for designing and sizing the system. And it's basically a very simple system of 2 people per bedroom, 75 gallons per person per day. Very simple system. So that defines it, and all of our systems start that way, from that basis. And I want to emphasize that they're based on the number of occupants. It's the maximum. If you have a 2-bedroom house, that septic system is designed for 4 people. You can't put more on all the time, or you're gonna have a problem. That's what they're designed for. So that issue has to be considered in all this process. Every system has its design limits. Now, I'm a living proof. The happiest day in the world was when I got my septic, or tapped the central sewer and got us some. I had 3 children, and as they grew up, we'd have family, and I could depend on having troubles every Christmas with that darn system. It'd back up, it couldn't handle it. And so I'd have to limit showers, and the 20 loads of washing a day and all this. It is a problem. It's a problem, and you have to watch that capacity in these systems. Another issue is people say, well, it's not a problem. It won't hurt for a little while. Well, it does. Now, it will not hurt on central system. Central system doesn't feel the impact of a 2-week heavy use period or a month heavy use. It doesn't feel it. It doesn't know it, because that averages out. You've got 50 or 200 houses. It all averages out to a flow, and there's a lot of historical classification on that. I did look, because I know this is over the vacation rentals. There is no criteria in the state regulations addressing it. It is treated as an individual home. So you follow, anything would fall under the regulations of an individual home as far as capacity, sizing, the elements. One of the most important things, after this is done, we go to an absorption field. That absorption field serves 2 purposes. One is additional level of treatment through the soil, and second is to dispose of it. When we go through a septic system, a good field, now if we import sand, and a lot of them up here I import sand on, we can expect close to a 90 to 95% reduction of BOD, which is a measurement of the bug's ability to eat the sewage. Suspended solids will get 95%, total solids probably 100%. We'll get a little bit of nitrogen reduction, not much, without recirculating. We can recirculate that sewage after it goes through a sand pass, back around again. We'll get a 70% nitrogen reduction. And now a lot of the rivers are being classified not so much on the flows that you put into the river, but the pounds of BOD, suspended solids, nitrogen, phosphates, these type of elements. Every river has its classification on it in the state of Colorado. The absorption field, the new regulations, I don't think there'll be another system put in Pitkin that will not have a pump. It's now required, anytime you replace the soil, you have to put a pump in.
You mean a recirculating pump?
No, not recirculating, just a pump to pump it to the absorption field. It doesn't matter if you're downhill. If you have to replace the soil, it's in the regulation. Most of the time in Pitkin, I gotta raise them up because we gotta stay 4 feet from that groundwater, high level groundwater, which we went through Chris, get his raised up over there for his son's house. And then we have to stay 4 feet from solid rock. Well, that's not particularly a problem here, solid rock. And I've seen, it is weird, I've seen places in Pitkin where there's hardly any groundwater. A good example is kind of right downtown, where the old, she claimed it was the stage stop, a little house that's got that all wrapped up. That well, they didn't hit water till 35 feet. And I don't know why, and water never showed in the basement, yet we went across the street and we dug a hole in the fall. Boy, it was perfect. We came back in the spring and it was completely full. So I had to redesign the system, raise it above the ground, so that we could get that 4-foot separation. New regulations have eliminated perk tests.
What kind?
Percolation test to see
Oh,
how
okay.
fast the soil perks. It's required to be done based on soil's classification. And as a result, it has increased the size of systems about 30%, as near as I can tell. It's something I'm really struggling with. I have looked at soils in the past and said, oh, this will perk great. Go to perk and it won't perk very good. So I'm still, in certain types of soil, I'll still do perk rates, personally, even though I don't have to at this point. So all of that leads to we size the field based on one element, gallons per day per square foot. So your size of your field has to go to your flow going into the field, based on maximum occupancy. Where's the future go? We talked about going to O&M. It is absolutely going to be an issue. Monitoring is going to be. I think you're going to see the state of Colorado come out and require mandatory reports be sent to them on every system in the state of Colorado. It's around the corner. And in closing, before I take questions, I made 15 copies of, this is right from the regulation, and it's on operation and maintenance of systems. And it tells you what the local board's responsibility is for scheduling maintenance, for POC practices to ensure that they're performing, to inspect systems, and requiring submission of proof. Proof of what's in the ground. If it's required, all they have to do is say, I don't know what's in the ground, you tell me. And some of these, I don't have any idea. I can tell you right now, without digging, you don't know, unless you can find something. And then it talks about maintaining all these inspection references, the condition of the septic, all of this needs to be incorporated into town's regulations. Goes on monitoring and sampling. It strictly says they can do it if they want to. They can implement sampling programs and monitoring programs to test sewage. Then it always allows you this ability for the fines and all that good stuff. So that's basically it. And these I just wanted people to kind of get a ear for them. And I want to make one thing clear. I am not here for or against vacation rentals. I was simply asked to talk about septic systems. That's not my issue. I could care less if they have 50 people if the system's properly designed, strictly from a sewage viewpoint. So does anybody have any questions?
Before we open it to the floor, I
Yes,
would
sir.
like to make it available to the people on the committee if they have any questions for you.
Oh, okay, sure.
Okay, Bob,
Yes,
we
sir.
got a number of systems that have shared absorption fields. Now, you know, the comments are, well, the field was designed to handle two. Is that really the case, or was it less expensive to build a common field?
You know, I can't answer that, but
Okay.
yes, it's going to be cheaper. There's no doubt about it. Whether it's designed right, you'd have to know what's in the ground. A lot of these old systems are perforated pipe. wrapped in straw. That's the old way we used to do it. Now we're using infiltrators. They're by far a more effective treatment method to dispose and treat in the soil. So you don't know, without measuring that and then knowing what flow comes from each house. If one house has 1 bedroom or 2 bedrooms, you go accordingly. I dealt with Howard Utsey up here on his system. It was a shared system. They had no idea what was down there, nobody. And I could see signs where it was failing. I mean, you could see the grass signs around the absorption field and measured it. I felt it couldn't handle over two people, and there were 2 cabins connected to it. So that's been solved now. We've solved that problem. Howard's putting in a brand new system. Phil Deutsch is installing it.
Let me ask you about this Rule 43. I understand that the town is in the process of updating its septic ordinance or regulation to comply with that. Right now, there's a requirement that new systems have to be engineered and installed properly. Existing systems have to be inspected every 3 years. Now, what does Rule 43 do to the current every 3rd year inspection? Does it require a greater frequency of inspection?
Not necessarily. It kind of leaves that up. It's open, they discuss it. 3 years on a septic system is too frequent. I can tell you right now, unless you have a kitchen or something, a good septic system ought to get septic tank working properly. Full year-round flow to it should have a 5 to 11 year window. Lots and lots of studies on it. I think it's a great idea that you look at every 3 years. I don't have a problem with that. But you shouldn't. And are you finding, Russ, did you or Rand, are you finding?
She's the one, she does all the,
I keep
Paperwork on
the records on
I can speak to that. I bought my house in 2007. Since that time, I have had the every 3 year inspection. I have never had a problem. It's, it's a 3-bedroom house, there's only one person.
Well, there you go, yeah.
But I am also very conscientious, and I did this when I was in the city. The phosphates and things aren't good for them either.
Yeah.
So I've always
It's
been
good,
very
it's
conscious.
very good.
So Rule 43 wouldn't require the town to do any more frequent inspection.
No.
But you're saying 4 or 5 years from now, the game's gonna change
It's gonna
significantly?
change somewhere in
I
this
mean-
process, and
Okay,
they're
But-
warning everybody.
yeah.
This
yeah.
was the first shot, and it's discussed a little bit in this where it's coming. It's around the corner.
Okay, and as Rule 43 would get strengthened over the years, existing systems would not have any right to continue as they are. They would have to come into compliance.
Eventually.
It's really not addressed. That's one of those issues that, unfortunately, we have this country that has rights. And
Yeah.
the system's not hurting anybody, you're not having a problem. Unless the town were to adopt an ordinance, the state of Colorado is elected not to. I have seen communities that have adopted regulations to prove that that system worked. Put the responsibility on the owner to come back and say, prove it. So they have
Yeah.
to dig the field, they have to find a design, and I'm gonna tell you, you're not gonna find it for these systems. I've dug into county records back in, when Mark Templeton was around, and they've all just disappeared. I can find permits once in a while.
But under those circumstances, Bob, can you inspect a system and with any level of certainty say that it's functioning? I mean, I know it may be old and you don't have the records of exactly the design criteria and everything else, but can you inspect it and can you evaluate it to determine if it's functional?
The answer is really no.
Okay.
And I'll tell you what I found. I found systems with buried that had a 12-foot deep, 8-foot diameter culvert they were dumping into. That was it. Their field had failed, so they put this in. Nobody knew it was it. A good friend of mine up in the Powderhorn area, the family was getting sick. And so he tested his water, found out it had E. coli in it. And so he hired me to go up and look at it. And the well, I found out, was hand dug. The septic system was discharging in the ditch 15 feet from the well. Had been that way for years. Years. So you don't know. one way you can tell with the new fields is green. You'll get an area, if you have an area that's green, it can indicate it's having problems, or it can also indicate it's working pretty well. Because it's getting that transpiration, where the roots, the plants go down and they bring it out, the liquid from that tank. So it is very, very difficult to prove without excavation or proof of what's in the ground. Joe, it's just almost impossible.
Okay, you said earlier that the design criteria, I guess for new systems, essentially is 150 gallons per day per bedroom. Is that?
That would be a good summary, yes.
So if you have a 3-bedroom house, it needs to have a septic system that's capable of handling 450 gallons per day would be the
Correct.
design criteria. Now, what size of a tank does that speak to?
3-bedroom would be 1,250 gallons.
And currently, I think 1,000 gallons is kind of the standard.
Some are, some aren't. You know, the old days, 1,000 would have worked, and I really don't know. I base, the regulation addresses it in here, and it does, and I could look it up real quick. Let me just do that, and see what that sizing is. Yeah, maybe I'll get it quick. Okay, 2 or 3 bedrooms is 1,000, the state says now. 4 bedrooms is 1,250. Each additional bedroom is 250 gallons. I base it on detention time.
Pardon?
Detention time, which is 50 hours to assume, or you don't assume, you look at the, say, a 4-bedroom house, you make sure that it's detained in the septic tank for that 50 hours.
Oh, quantity versus,
Right, right. Then I know we're getting proper treatment.
All right, so, like Gwen, I've had my tank inspected every 3 years and it's always passed.
Yeah.
So what does that mean?
That simply means that your tank.
keeping our system
You're
alive.
keeping it alive, probably.
Or we don't know what's going on out on the lateral
You don't
field.
have
And
any
I'm on
idea.
one of those shared junction box get-ups that somebody cooked up 20 or 30 years
Yeah.
ago. But, so my tank's operating properly, it's got the right chemistry in it or whatever. But we don't know for sure what's going on out in the septic
right.
thing.
And you're probably in groundwater.
Pardon?
Are you by a ditch or?
No, I'm
You're up on the hill?
Up on.
Okay, so you don't have a
I
groundwater
don't have
system.
groundwater problem.
Some of these, I've got a new one I'm working on up here that, gosh, the groundwater's that far below
Oh,
the
yeah.
surface. And the system's in the field is in the groundwater. It can't work, period.
So if we have homes in Pitkin that have been being inspected, I guess regularly since the mid-90s, is that right? Town took it over. And they're supposed to be inspected every 3 years, and they're either passing or have been pumped. Is there any point or is there a need, if somebody's gonna convert one of these to a short-term rental, that maybe is gonna have a little bit more frequent occupancy, at least in a peak period of time of the year? Is there anything additionally that we can do or should do? I mean, is it necessary if the tank's functioning properly? And
Again, the tank is one element. The tank you can identify, you can find, you can dig the corners of it up, you can figure out how much volume, you can see if it's big enough. And if it's not in groundwater, if it's in groundwater, you can have it put down and test to see if it's watertight, to see if water infiltrates in. If it's out of groundwater, you could leave it set, measure it, and say a 24, 48 hour period, not use it, and see if it drops down. If it drops down, the tank should be replaced. So that's the tank. The next element, we don't have any idea, a lot of these is the absorption field.
so
That's where your pollution of your groundwater can come from.
So if the town were to require, let's say, a short-term rental unit to have an annual inspection of the septic tank, that would be, I guess, a step in the right direction perhaps. But it doesn't answer the question about the absorption field. But won't that be kind of answered in time? If it's creating a problem, it'll become visible?
No,
Maybe,
not really.
maybe not. That's the problem. And I think I would start by saying, okay, you have a 2-bedroom house, and it's been used a lot, and there's never been a problem. Make the assumption at this point without, you could ask them to dig it up and prove it, obviously. It's working, but it may not be working right. It may be a pipe in the ground, who knows? But it is working, so, but if it goes over that usage of those 2 bedrooms, and you know, vacation rentals will. I rented one in Puerto Rico, a 3-bedroom house, and I put 16 people in it, my family. We were in sleeping bags all over the place, and so I know that happens.
So are you saying that if we set the occupancy based upon the number of bedrooms, 2 per person, period, unless the property owner or the short-term rental operator wants to document that they have a greater capacity, then they could get a greater occupancy level? Is that?
Yeah, I think your system, it's designed for so many people. If it's gonna be used for over that, say a 2-bedroom house is 4 people.
Right. So
If
you're
you have
saying
more than
that,
then you should have proof of some kind.
so in other words, our guideline might be something along, we talked about this last week, we said 2 per bedroom plus 2 more without a bedroom. So a 3-bedroom would have an occupancy of 8. You're suggesting we should.
Where are you getting that from? Just out
Well,
of the sky?
We
kind
saw
of-
some other, we saw
I'm
some
just
other-
curious.
We were reading some of the
Silverton.
regulations of other
Yeah.
cities.
But anyway, so I guess my
So
question
you're
is,
kind of limiting their occupancy
right,
to the person that's
and
renting.
I think people, we've talked and we think there's reason to set some sort of an occupancy level. But I think you're suggesting, or if I understand correctly, you would suggest that it would be with, let's say, an annual inspection of the septic system, 2 persons per bedroom occupancy limit. So a 2-bedroom house would have 4, period, 3-bedroom, 6, et cetera. And an annual inspection of the septic system, that'd be a step in the right direction. But if an individual wanted to have greater occupancy in their units that they wanted to turn into short-term rental, they wanted to have 10, let's say, in a 3-bedroom, we might require then for them to document that the system has the capability to handle that.
Capacity.
Capacity, yeah.
Is that,
Yes, and you know, there's a school of thought which is not in the new regulations. Used to be, you could get reductions if you monitored the flow into it. That's been taken out of the new regulations. And good reasoning, in order to get that flow proper, you would need to take that flow reading every day. You can't average. You know, you got a family in for a week with 10,
Right.
and then you're empty for 3 days.
You can't do it
You
monthly.
can't do it on monthly. It has to be every day. And you could use your water meter, but if you watered grass or anything, it's throwing that data off.
Okay, can we shift gears and ask, I have a question about what you said earlier on about seasonal septic systems and basically how they're non-functioning.
That's correct.
So what can an owner do to speed up that process? Say we're only here in the summer or 6 months out of the year maximum. What can we do to improve the effectiveness of the system?
You feed it,
Okay?
but don't go spending $2,000 and $3,000 on these bugs they advertise in the magazines.
Well, what about a box of Riddex? I mean, that's the standard thing, right?
Yeah,
I mean, if
yeah.
you go buy a box of Riddex and flush it down the toilet.
Yeah, I don't know.
No.
What I would do, if I was really a problem, is I'd go to the city of Gunnison, I'd take out 5 gallon or 10 gallons, and I'd go get activated sludge. It's full of critters.
Activated sludge.
Yeah, they'll give it to you. They'll pull it right out of there, and it's gonna have a heck of a county bacteria.
I bet it
Yeah.
kind of smells.
That's the kind of thing you want to carry in
It's
your back.
it's aerobic. It's aerobic. It'll smell like musty dirt.
Okay.
Then you put in a quart of molasses into it. Let it grow for a day or two, then dump it in your septic system. With some dog food, if you don't have, or something like that, you're going to get that system acting real fast. And
so
then it's gonna
we
work.
could make a requirement that Anybody run the short-term rental, go down and get 5 gallons of sludge.
Why would you do it to the short term versus every other?
Well,
Right.
Seasonal
Why not?
person.
Theoretically, everybody that's here on a seasonal basis should be doing that. Is that correct?
It's just a problem, that's just,
Well, if
it's a
the
fact,
town
the
of
system
Reed-
is not working.
Sharpton has inspected tanks in the winter that are frozen on top, which means all the bacteria
It's
are
gone.
dead.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Could you
There's
just
no
go over
heat
that
in it.
recipe again? It's
Activated
5 or
sludge,
10 gallons
yeah,
of
5,
activated
6,
sludge,
yeah.
a quart of molasses stirred in and let it
Stir it
sit
in,
for a
let
couple
it set,
days,
and put it in your septic system.
and then dump that in the septic
Yeah.
system after
With a
that.
handful of dog food.
You could put
Yeah.
buttermilk, but I'd use molasses, it's cheaper.
Mr. Williams,
Okay.
what does antifreeze on, with the, people winterize their homes so that the pipes don't freeze, and then in the summertime when they come home, they're washing all the antifreeze out. Does the motorhome antifreeze, is it actually safe to the?
It's safe.
It
If they use regular antifreeze, well, it'll kill a kid.
Yeah.
If you drink it, it's deadly.
But what's it do, what's ethylene glycol do to the
It
system?
does not affect the systems.
It doesn't,
Does not. We looked into it. I did Crater's RV park up there.
okay?
Well, you know that. And we did quite a lot of research on that. And there was a lot of test data showing it does not impact systems.
It doesn't keep, it keeps them from freezing, does it?
Well,
Not even that?
It just keeps the pipes, you know.
Put it in your
Oh.
cleaning traps.
your
Yeah,
trap,
that's the thing I understand, yes.
Yes, yes. Yeah, the worst part about RVs can be the chemicals they use in it.
And they're not as frankly, they're not as effective at really low temperatures.
They're not.
No,
It's
and at
fact.
40 below and below that.
If I had a septic and I said, Bob, I need you to come dig it up, tell me what I got, what would that cost ballpark?
Oh, I don't have any idea for sure. It just depends. You'd have to start, if you don't even know where it is, you'd have to start from your septic tank and start digging, spot dig on that pipe till you find your field.
Post hole digging,
Pardon?
post hole digging.
Yeah, post hole digging, enough to where you find it. And then if you hit a lateral spread out, you go try to find the ends, then you assume they went 90 degrees down. You just keep digging till you can say, okay, here's what I think it is.
It's called archaeology.
Yeah. If you dig into a field like that, and if you go to the ends of it, and it's full, you've got a field that's not working real good. The principle of an absorption field is, as the flow goes in, it's
It spreads
absorbed in the
out.
first part. As it settles into this ground, it keeps moving its way down that field.
Right. And the probability of reaching clear to the end of the field is very low.
Very low. In a properly working. If you look at, you see them around here, the pipes sticking out. We're putting monitoring ports now,
Okay.
so that you can get in there and you can look into that field and see. Take a mirror down and you can see what's going on. See if a sludge layer is developing. Or
And so does the committee have any questions? Let's turn it open to the floor.
you're welcome.
Okay, does any folks out there have any questions or comments you would like to make or put to Mr. Williams?
I got one. You said RVs and you said the chemicals they put in them. So if you're using a biodegradable chemical in the holding tank, is that safe?
That's okay. I think it's acetone that's used. I'm not an RVer, but there's another product you can get that it keeps the odor down, and it could be a Bearcat. And Crater's actually, up there on their system, make people certify they don't have it. And when they come in, they have to have dumped their tank before they'll accept them. Because they're all on septic systems up there.
It's biodegradable. Any of the
Yeah.
biodegradables are okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Bob?
Yeah, Bob, question. You talked about this capacity requirement, and one of the things you threw out was assume 2 people per bedroom. Now, is that a Regulation 43 requirement?
Yes, it is.
And my next question is, then if the town allows 10 people to be in one of these places that's sized for much less, are the town trustees or the council individually or collectively liable if for not or for allowing this to happen?
Yeah, I'm not an attorney, but if you had prior knowledge, I would sure think you have some liability.
Didn't you say that the Gunnison County put it back onto the city of Pitkin? 'Cause
Yeah, they just refused. They were you were contracting with the city of, or the county of Gunnison
But,
to do it.
but that will all come back to the city now,
Not to
all
the county.
responsibility.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. So I think it's just, it's that knowledge, that pre-knowledge that if you had it, I suppose you could have, but you'd have to ask your attorney that question.
Yeah. A second question is, let's say that I lock up my house and go away. How many days or weeks does it take for that septic system to die?
It probably depends on how active, if you had a big family in there, you probably got a 30 to 45 day window. With a small usage, you may have a 2-week to a 30-day window. And it's dead. It just becomes dormant. There's nothing for them to eat, so they die.
And the term is they die, it's because dormant means that you're alive and you're gonna come back.
Correct.
So you're saying
Yeah.
it's dead.
Yeah, they die because there's no food. They're a living creature, so they have to have that food in there. And it was a lot of theory, and I don't know what's good, bad, or different, that people would throw 50 pounds of dog food in when they leave.
I've heard that.
And I can't see what it could hurt.
Well, that's what I was told to start it. Go
Yeah,
put
yeah.
40 pounds of dog food in.
Yeah.
But, historically, from personal experience, we have not been there in the winter for many, many years, and we never had it pumped. Okay, not in 20 years. did we
You're
ever
here,
pump.
place here, or
In Tin Cup.
Tin Cup, yeah.
And then we started being there in the winter, but the point was, we never did anything like what you're talking about, but everything indicates that the system is working perfectly. So I find it hard to believe that these things die completely, because we don't do anything special to revive them. In those years when we were not there for the whole winter, we arrived in the spring again, and we did absolutely nothing to start them up again. And it worked fine.
Joe,
So-
and it's out of mind. What's happening during that phase, the critters aren't working. So you are sending sludge to your absorption field. Okay? It's minor, but that's what's happening. Then your critters get growing,
Right,
and they go out into that absorption field and clean it out.
Oh, okay.
As long as you're not hydraulically overloaded.
Okay.
So that, you don't know it's out of,
Right, I
it's
see-
working.
I see what
It's
you're
working.
saying. Okay.
Are you talking about Gunnison Gold?
No, Gunnison Gold is for your plants and ground.
Okay.
This is, they literally.
Is that where you go to get this sludge?
Yes, you go to see Dale Picard.
Yeah, I know Dale.
He'll just get a 5-gallon bucket, and he'll dip it out of the digester.
Bucket of poop.
Bucket of poop's what it is, excuse me, but it's full of active
Same place you
bacteria.
get your water well tested?
Yeah, same place, yes.
All right.
Will he hose off the bucket for you?
Yeah, you probably would go
Okay,
Dale.
let's get back to task here. Okay, I'm going to recognize Chris. Chris,
I have two questions, Bob. One
Yes,
is,
sir.
what criteria establishes a room as a bedroom?
The regulations state that any room which could hold a bedroom is considered a bedroom. And they actually say in new construction that if you have what you're calling an office, it has to be considered that the person that buys the place or uses it later could make it into a bedroom. So if you had a 2-bedroom house with an office, you'd design for a 3-bedroom house.
Second part is, in your professional opinion, looking towards the future of Pitkin, what advice would you give the town trustees as far as this issue we're talking about?
In respect to the, just
Should
the
we be looking
septic or a
towards,
future system.
Wastewater treatment,
Yeah.
public?
Best thing that could happen to Pitkin, I hate to say it, is to get some contaminated wells. And maybe somebody get a little sick,
Yeah, and then we get a grant.
I tell you what it's gonna do.
It'll get
It
your
opens
funding.
up eyes, get potential funding.
Get your funding.
Yeah.
You
You know,
know,
I would
Like a super
start,
fund.
I would honestly, Chris, I think that is a great question. I know how I would design this system today. It was not like I would have in the old days where I'd put main sewer lines in, very expensive. I would put a step system in, which is each septic tank is maintained. If they're old, you dig them up and you replace them, and there's a pump put in. And you pump 40% treated liquid into a high-velocity small line. I'd go down and deal with a fish hatchery and put it in those fish hatchery ponds. Because you know, we bought that property, or I did, the town did,
Yeah.
it's on this end, but you can't develop there now, it's wetlands.
Is that like a grinder pump system or?
No, there's a screen that goes around it, and it's a water well pump. Believe it or not, and it'll pass 1/8-inch solids.
Huh.
But continuing on Chris's point, I think the trustees should seriously consider trying to hire somebody that's a grant person, that can get grants. I have watched town of Saguache got a grant to redo all their 3rd Street. Now they're getting a grant to redo their septic, or their town lagoon system. Town of Crestone that I work with got a grant to put public parks in. Just get a good grant writer. These people know where they're at, and have them pursue grants. You know, work with the Colorado Division of Water Resources, work with the EPA, anybody you can to try to get help. That's a long-term solution.
Do I understand you, you're talking about taking the effluent from the tanks, just maintaining the tanks that are in place,
Right.
taking the effluent from the tank and treating that,
Yeah.
keeping the solids in the tank and continue to do the inspections.
Yeah, and
On
at
the
that
tanks.
point, what usually that I recommend is the old homeowner is no longer responsible for maintaining that tank. The town
becomes a
picks
part
up
of the
that
system.
responsibility, they pump it, they regulate it out. If the tank fails or something, that's the owner's responsibility, or if their pump fails. There's a lot of these systems going in right now, all across the United States. And they're working very effectively. They're called STEP, S-T-E-P. And you get online and do some research on them.
But
I read about
but like you said, that's the long term.
That's a long-term solution
So-
for the town.
In a nutshell, what's the probably the most critical one or two things? Well, I think we've talked about most of them, but in your opinion, the most critical two or three items that we would need to monitor if we were to consider the short-term rental situation?
I think that the first place I would start is to prove what's in. Find out what's in the ground. And through some technique and whatever it takes for that owner. Some of you may know what's in the, you may know what you have. Prove it, find out it's not in the groundwater too. That's very important. And so if you find that, I don't know, that's where you gotta then deal with, say, no, we're not gonna allow it. Or, yes, we'll maybe allow it, but you need to replace that system within X months or so. I don't know.
Okay.
You just have to come up
So
with
that's-
something that you think is fair and justifiable.
Prove what's in the ground, that's one.
That's, I guess, what I would do, yeah.
Okay. And
Now,
then-
are you talking about as far as the tank or the entire system?
Tank can be proved real easy.
But are you saying the rest of the system
I'm
also
talking about
approved?
the absorption field, yeah.
Are you saying, now wait a minute. Would you require that if somebody wanted to take their two-bedroom home and start renting it out in the summer as a short-term rental for capacity of 4 people? You think they should, to start that up?
No, I think I don't think you'd have a right to stop them.
I
If
think
they
he's
had,
saying
if
if
4
it's
people, if
over
they're
a
gonna do
limit.
8 people or something, or they've got a
If they want to exceed,
two-bedroom system and they wanna put,
if they want to exceed a reasonable
But-
capacity.
unreasonable, yes.
Then how do we know they have a 2-bedroom system?
Well, you could only base it on what's historically been there, and it's working, that's a problem. But,
Yeah.
I don't know. You gotta protect this water.
I
It's
mean-
up to every one of us to protect our groundwater here.
I got a question. We got a creek running through a whole bunch of lots down here.
Yeah.
How close would you get to that creek with the absorption and the tank?
The state says 50 feet. Gunnison County says 100 feet. I try to get it as far away as I can get it. But I'm more critical to the well. The well, 100
Yeah.
feet, period.
Yeah,
Period.
and no exceptions.
No exceptions.
But along with that, Brad, he's also talking about,
and I know this is a problem because I live down there, the absorption field needs to be up
Above.
Above the groundwater.
the
Mound
groundwater.
system,
And the
yes.
groundwater on the lots along the creek is at
Level.
at surface level. I
Right.
can
Yeah,
vouch
the
for
road
that.
it is, yes.
Yeah. So along the creek down there, particularly on the south side of State Street, you would have elevated absorption fields.
Yeah, I just did a system, what's his name? He's got the house for sale.
Cox.
Yes, yes, and we had to put that up on the hill. I couldn't get it away from all the wells, and we pumped up to it. I'm working with the people next door that own 5 lots there, and they wanna sell that. And so I'm gonna produce a map that shows them where everything sits, so that they can represent to a prospective buyer, hey, I can build here.
Is that the vacant lots that are down the creek from the Smiths
I think it is.
from Oklahoma?
Is it Smith?
I think.
think it's those
They have
ones
vacant
that-
lots that are that way
Okay,
from.
so-
Yes, 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 yes.
Kind of following up on your question, Joe. At our last meeting, we set this occupancy at 2 people per bedroom plus 2. So we assume like a 3-bedroom house would allow 8 people. What you're suggesting is we should set that at 2 per bedroom, which would be 6. And then maybe with an annual inspection of septic system. If they want to exceed that capacity, then having proved what they've got, that it's got the capability. Is that how you understood that?
Yes.
But how do you know what the original design, like you said, you don't
That's
know what the
the
original
problem.
design.
Now,
Well,
you can go to some of these new ones we've designed, I can tell you.
Oh,
exactly
exactly,
what's
it's
in
all.
there.
See, that's where I think we have to make a bit of an assumption and accept the fact that there have been ongoing inspections.
That's right.
Now, again, I'm gonna
See,
emphasize-
I don't think it's reasonable, if somebody wants to convert a unit to short-term rental, and they're willing to limit 2 persons per bedroom, and everything we know to this point is that place has been there, people have been there in and out, off and on, seasonally or whatever, and there haven't been any apparent problems. I think that the inspection ought to be sufficient documentation if they're gonna limit their capacity to the 2 per bedroom. That should be fine. I think if they wanna, I wanna put 8 people in there because I'm gonna make more money or whatever, then we say, okay, well then you prove that you've got the capability to do it. We've gotta make
Well-
some assumption.
Well, we
Yeah.
can make some assumptions.
Well-
And I think probably some of it may have to do with the age of the thing we're
That's what I
trying
was
to
gonna
raise.
say.
But can you say, I mean, you can determine the capacity of the tank
The tank.
pretty
Yeah.
easily. I mean,
Yeah.
and that's the
That's the
number one.
first step.
Sure, but
If you
do
got a
that.
500-gallon tank,
But what he's saying is, you can't, the leach field.
I know, I
is-
understand, but the design criteria should have been, like if we have a 1,500-gallon tank, right, it would have been for 8 people,
Yeah.
right?
Correct.
So,
So there-
once
so
you
you
know
need to,
that,
you need to
you
to
didn't
get
even know
your
you
feet.
have, regardless of the number of bedrooms, if that's the size of the tank.
You know, and I do know
We got
that there are
Okay.
There are
People
several
out
arrowhead systems in town. Oldwood, I think Rand knows where a few of them are. They're worthless.
Yeah.
They're absolutely worthless. All they're doing is polluting the groundwater.
Okay, Candy?
Bob, I think at the beginning of the meeting, did you say that the state of Colorado requires septic inspections every 5 years?
State of Colorado requires none.
Okay, but Pitkin requires 3.
Right.
Most of the homes in Pitkin that would be inspected every 3 years are seasonal. And a short-term rental would be considered seasonal as well. So should we not require seasonal homes to be annually as well? And did you say that? I didn't recall you saying that we
No,
should do an inspection.
I don't think you're gonna learn anything personally by a year inspection. I think it's a waste of your time.
You
Because,
didn't, because I think Pete said, you said that we should have seasonal homes or short-term rentals done annually, but I don't think you said that, did you?
testing the tank,
No, he
Just
wasn't
inspection,
talking
not
about,
testing.
he was talking about inspections for short-term rentals might be.
yeah, that you
Needed.
should.
Not-
If you-
not
If they're wanting to
seasonal
do it,
homes.
then you get out there with the owner and Rand or whoever works on that and try to confirm what's out there. And then if you feel it's out there, if you feel it's uncomfortable and that have, put the burden of proof onto them.
Hey, Chris, you had your hand up a while ago.
Well, this is going all the way back. I mean, we've talked about so many things since I held my hand up. I was just curious about requirements for gray water systems, inspections, and everything else is exactly the same for gray water as it is for ISDS or on-site wastewater, right?
Correct, there is no distinguishing
Okay.
difference, however. the
Inspection intervals, everything.
Yeah, at this point, however, a brand new gray water regulations coming out, which will be out probably early next year. They're in preparation right now. Colorado is one of the few states that does not have gray water regulations. Arizona, they allow irrigation with gray water. All you gotta do is do a little treatment on it. It's a great source to reuse.
I like gray.
A gray water requires a little small tank just to settle out the lits and things like that in it, or little solids that get in there.
And when they won't let you water,
Yeah, so there you go. So yeah, Chris, to answer your question,
Minimum 35-gallon tank?
it just depends on the system, but yeah, that's typically what I designed. And then an absorption field to handle that capacity. But it's still the same system. If it's in the water, it has to be elevated and pumped. It's the same system.
Okay, Susie?
I have noticed that some people, it used to be that our rule when we started in 1995 was that people had to have their systems pumped every 5 years. That was it. There wasn't the inspection thing. Then about 2001, or I think it was, somebody that lived here at that point in the summer, he was quite adept at figuring out septic system stuff. And he told us we really shouldn't be pumping them that often. We should be just inspecting them to make sure that they weren't having a problem, or then James Sharpton measures the sludge and measures all this stuff. Sometimes people, instead of when it's their turn, I send them letters every year to remind that this is your year, you need to have your system inspected or pumped, because our ordinance says they can do either one. Well, the pumping is quite expensive, but there are some people that do that, and I'm almost wondering if we should change that, because when they pump it, they lose all the good little bugs, and it's not doing any good, because a lot of times they're seasonal, so then it's even worse. I just wondered.
I do not believe in pumping on a regular basis.
Right.
Joe's proof with his little cabin up there.
Yeah.
What you need to check is your scum layer and your sludge layer.
Uh-huh.
And when that sludge layer gets to around 12 inches to 18 inches, you should pump it. And I bet you're not finding any of them at that level, are you?
Well, I don't keep track of that. I just
Oh.
keep track of
When they
who
pump,
needs to
yeah.
do
Well,
what. But James would know that.
I built 17 years ago, and I've had to pump once.
Yeah.
And James inspected it, and I collected a little too much sludge in the bottom, and
Did you? Yeah.
he
Yeah.
just had it pumped.
And what happens then is that sludge washes out and goes into your absorption
To the field, and
and
then
it'll cause
comes-
them to fail.
and causes it.
Okay. All right, Jess?
Earlier, we used to talk about pumping a septic tank. You mentioned it takes 60 days for it to reactivate.
30, depending on your use, 30 to 60 days. 30 to 45 days is probably a pretty safe figure.
but he didn't say just pumping, he also said when you come up and you open up your house for, to live in, it takes,
That it takes to get that, when it's been dormant through the winter, it's gonna take 30 to 45, maybe longer, depending on the solids you put down to get that tank reactivated, because it's dead.
And
Unless you go get a
Unless
5-gallon
you
bucket, right?
put something in it, and it's unless you put the super sludge or activate that
So if
yourself.
we're gone 10 months in the winter, come back and open it up in June, here 2 months, and close it down, it's just started
Just
working.
started doing its thing.
And so will it eat up the solids before they starve to death and go dead in the winter?
If they have food, they'll live. They do become semi-dormant as it's colder,
Yeah.
but if there's no food, they're gonna die.
My last question, in January, I was told on a 3-bedroom system, 6 people, for example, and you bring in your family for Christmas of another 6 people, that's fantastic and all right. But if you have a home that's designed for 6 people and you bring in 12 transients for 5 days, then that's an absolute sin. Would you address that, please?
Yeah, I will. Again, the systems are based on hydraulic capability. Flow to the tank and the system. If you exceed that, you're exceeding the design capacity of the system. It's that simple. Seasonal transient type people, one thing I would strongly recommend if you allow this is that you get one of the things to be careful. People don't care when they get to a transient. Like, you'll take care of your house. You won't take that bacon grease and dump it down the sink. People will do that, and you'll get a lot of bad grease buildup. I fought that on condo projects up in Lake City. We've got a lift station. We get 2 to 3 inches of grease in that thing all the time. And we finally put out this notice to all of them to please don't dump your grease. It's surprising. Now we're down to just a little layer. People didn't know different. They don't, they're not used to septic systems.
Okay, yes, sir.
Bob, I'm Mike Cannell. You did a system for me at 303 Main.
Sure did, yeah.
We talked on the phone quite a bit. My question has to do with the inspections. I've owned that cabin for about 10 years, and I think I've had 2 or 3 of these 3-year inspections. It's been seasonal ever since I bought it, but it's never failed to pass those inspections. So am I just getting confirmation that my tank is okay? It doesn't give me any indication that my leach field is doing all right?
That's correct. It's all it's doing is telling you what your status of your tank is.
So even if we went to an annual inspection for short-term rentals, we're not getting a thorough inspection?
I think it's a waste of time, personally. I just see no reason to do it because you're not going to learn anything. Unless it was so big that you had so many people and you put so much sludge, it's going to be fine for a year. I think every 3 years is probably too much, but that's all right. It's good to watch it every 3 years, I think.
Okay. So again, I'm not getting a very thorough inspection at 3 years. All I'm determining is that my tank is.
Correct. You don't know what's happening out here.
But after 3 years, if there were problems out in the absorption field, either through a water well test or a bunch of green grass, there might be some evidence that maybe there's a problem there. If people aren't noticing that, then probably
if you're in a high groundwater, you're never going to know it.
yeah.
Never going to know it. It's getting worse right now.
Okay.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
If you're in a high groundwater level and in your absorption field, that liquid is just going into the groundwater. It's just being washed away. So you get no treatment whatsoever.
Was that your question, Jared? Do you have another one?
No, I did. Is that okay?
Sure.
My question, well, you mentioned Arrowhead. What year?
96.
1996, we replaced a 21-year-old holding tank over here in our A-frame. And we said, you know, we don't want to have to do this one more time in our life. So
Right.
We want state-of-the-art. Give us, we don't care how much it costs, state-of-the-art, please. And I don't know that it was you at all. It was just whoever was
The
the
county came and did the percolation
county
test
did.
and drew up the plan.
Wonderful, because we're so proud and happy. And I just heard you say it's worthless. They put in an Arrowhead. I mean, I'm just shocked.
Arrowhead system?
That's
Yes,
exactly
sir.
what they put in. State of the art. It was
1996.
1996. Arrowhead, it's the greatest thing in the world. This is just it. And I
Yeah,
just heard you say it's worthless.
I'm shocked at that.
I'm shocked
Because
tonight myself.
they have failed almost everywhere they've been put in. All
We've not
they
had a bit
are,
of trouble with
Not
it.
had
all they are is a round tank. Was this round?
I don't believe so. I believe it was rectangle. Dave Nickel put it in for us. We weren't here.
Well, it's kind of this year.
Yeah. Anyway, it's a round tank that all it does is absorb around the outer edge. And you put some gravel around it. There's no treatment. And they plug up. They were actually invented for the Arrowhead subdivision in Gunnison. That's where it got its
Yes,
name.
we were told that. It was
Yeah.
state of the art because it's all brand new engineered. I'm like,
I'm sorry, but that's a,
Maybe
it's
get a
fact.
refund.
Okay, Cindy?
Well, the worst
That
thing
was
about
my
the whole
question.
deal, we had a fiberglass holding tank, and when we bought the place, we realized we weren't pumping. So I had it inspected, not waiting for a 3-year deal, and we found that it had settled and rock had poked a hole in it. Our well was 40 foot downstream, directly downstream. I tested water immediately, perfect.
Perfect, yeah.
But we launched the Arrowhead immediately because we didn't want our water contaminated.
Yeah.
And,
The Arrowhead system is now illegal.
And what?
It's illegal in the state of Colorado.
Hmm.
But it must be
and
working.
that was the county engineer.
Yeah, that's how technology changes, I guess.
So that gives me a concern about going, I know all you can do is the best you know at the time, so we thought we did the very best.
You did the best thing you could
But
do.
now,
Let-
you know how things are gonna change again, and can you see where I
Yeah,
get a little jaded?
The only thing that's
We
for
paid
certain is
for-
things are gonna change.
Yeah.
So let's not dwell on the Arrowhead system. Cindy?
Could you please explain what you mean that, you said if the grass was green on the absorption field, it could be bad, or it could mean it's working properly?
That's correct. Now, the reason it could be bad is that the liquid has no place to go. It can't go down. So it's backing up into your field, the grass is growing and it's starting to spread out. The other aspect of it, if it's a properly installed that has a good root system to it, or excuse me, not real deep, then those grasses will go down with their roots into those channels, and they're getting all the nutrients they need. So that's why it's a kind of a two-headed. The way to prove that is to dig a hole. All you gotta do is go in and dig a hole.
If you have infiltrators, does that make any difference?
Infiltrators can work the same way.
Okay.
Yeah, but you got 2 feet, so they don't have a tendency to green up much. But an old field, that may be perfect, but just go dig a hole in it. And if you find liquid settling in it, you know you have a problem.
How deep would you have to go to?
Oh, a couple of feet,
Okay, to see if you have.
just to see if you got digging right beside your field. Don't dig in the middle of your field, dig to the side, just go down, say 2 feet, and see if you run into standing liquid, you have a field that has problems.
It's not leaching.
It's not leaching
All right,
properly.
Rand?
Now, our every 3-year inspection, they're going after the bottom sludge. And there's a percentage, and I think it's basically in a 1,000-gallon tank, 16 inches.
Something like that, yeah.
The reason they want us to pump that is because if it gets up higher, doesn't it run into your leach field and plug
Correct,
it?
that's exactly what happens, yes.
So the every 3-year inspection is just trying to save your leach field.
Yeah. What it kind of is, in that first chamber is a minor clarifier. All of our sewage treatment plants, the big ones, have what we call clarifiers. We go through, first of all, we get the bacteria growing in an aerobic tank with air in it. Then we take it into a clarifier and we allow it to settle. In that zone, that velocity has to be maintained properly for it to settle. It's the same thing in that tank. You've got too little volume for it to settle when the sludge gets too high, so those particles just go right through.
Hey, Chris?
Hey, Bob, determining the hydraulic load on the system, if the well is specifically used for domestic use, no car washing, no lawn watering, we put a meter on the well, is that a good way to determine the hydraulic load on the septic?
As long as it's read every day.
Every day.
Every day.
And with today's technology, can't you get something that would record that?
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
I mean,
you
you
can-
wouldn't have to
there's
manually-
recording.
Yeah,
There's recording meters. Yeah, they'll actually transmit it electronically now.
right, get an app
Yeah.
for that.
How expensive of a process is it?
You know, I really, a
$500
little meter's not very
$500.
expensive, a couple, $300. If you get a recording one, I don't know what they run.
So if that were to be implemented and a house was determined that the water consumption was greater than the $75 gallons per person, then that would throw up some kind of
Yeah,
a,
any
of a
given
flag.
one day,
Pardon?
any given one day. That's what you're looking at hydraulically.
All right, was there another question out here?
John, you mind if I ask a question?
No, go ahead.
Going back to kind of hydraulic overloading, how do you know, like there was an example earlier, if you have, say, a 2-bedroom house, so your septic's designed for 4 people, and you have a get-together, and you have 4 more people come over. I mean, I don't think anybody here has had a septic fail. I mean, there's got to be. Now, I know, I see where the system, how it's designed, but there's got to be somewhat of a kind of a grace period or some flexibility there, because I mean, it's not like anytime somebody has more than the rated number of people in their house, the septic fails.
Absolutely not. It doesn't matter. What it does is, if it's overtime, it's not gonna work.
Well, I'm just curious if,
yeah,
and I know it's hard to say if there's a certain time period of
You know,
overloading
it's just
that-
a hydraulic
that causes-
overload that you gotta monitor. And there's a theory, well, they rest, as we've talked about that, the fields rest in the winter. Well, they rest, but they're not operating, they're not working during that time. Yeah, if you have a party, sure, you're not probably gonna use, but if you have a party, everybody's not showering, doing clothes washing, things like that.
Okay. Okay, Joe.
Just, okay, so if it was a house next to you and, you know all the stuff that you do, what would you like for the testing to be done before that house became a rental? And you're all sharing the same water and you're all on septics?
I would just make sure that it's hydraulically designed right.
Hydraulically designed.
Septic tank and absorption field.
Okay, now, my father-in-law bought a place a few years back, and the tank had caved in. It was some type of a hard rubber type tank. And so he made the call, let's just run in and fix it. So we dug it up, and as we exposed it, we found that the tank had, apparently there had been leach field issues. So the leach field was disconnected. And there was a 90-degree elbow coming off the side of the tank. And even with that configuration, it's possible that test, if all we did was to do our 3-year test, that would have tested to be just fine.
That's right.
Glad to know that's right up gradient from our well.
Well, Brad and I found one.
No wonder why your water came out brown.
It's fixed.
We like where we live.
Well, that's taking due responsibility. That's what we all need to do. It's, you know, it's your little community, you gotta protect it. And I do everything I can to protect it up here.
Well, does anybody have anything further? Any questions? Yes?
I guess I do. So then, okay, so if the 3-year testing the tank is kind of a waste of time, or 1 year would be certainly a waste of time, what should we do? Should we have everybody check their absorption field by digging down 2 feet or something? I mean, what can we do to help everybody and help the town to do it right?
Yeah, the dig down of 2 feet is only if you have a green, okay?
Only if it's green.
Yeah, that's just to tell you what's going on, the type of treatment. The only way you can confirm it is find your absorption field and dig enough to confirm what you have out there. And if they're laterals, if you go to the end of the lateral and it's backed up, you've got problems. It means the system's not working properly. That's the only way, and I tell you what, I've looked for some of them, I don't even know where they are up here.
But this is not a short-term rental issue. This is just a fundamental issue.
It's a fundamental issue,
Right?
whether it's
Right.
short-term or anything,
Exactly.
I don't care what it
Exactly.
is, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
When we say you have green, I have green grass on top of my absorption field all over my front yard. And it has those, what do you call those white, you did it in 2001.
Uh-huh.
And it's got those little white pipes that stick out, so I've got
Yeah.
piles of rocks covering them up so they don't stick out all over my front yard. Well, my grass is green, but that's not what you're meaning when you say it's green.
Yeah, I can tell you real quick why that's there. Go open the lid and see if you see liquid. If you see liquid, you got a problem. If you don't see liquid, it's working perfect.
You mean one of the standpipes?
The standpipe,
Those
yeah.
standpipes.
That's why we put them in.
And those are,
Can you help me do
yeah,
that?
Yeah, but you water your grass too.
If
No,
I go to the
no,
effort to
no.
dig down 2
Well,
feet,
yeah,
should I put a pipe in?
I would, yes, if I'd fight it, I'd put a monitoring pipe in, yes.
All right, well, I think that if nobody has any further questions, we can turn Mr. Williams loose, and
Let him go
thank him
on.
very much for
Thank
his
you.
time to come here
Thank
and
you.
do this.
Well, appreciate all of you. Feel free if anybody has any questions to call me. I know Chris and I talk frequently, and yeah, so anybody.
I really appreciate the information.
Yeah, it's good info.
Well, thank you. And there's a little bit of that
Very
regulation so that you can.
concise, straight to the point.
I think we did, exactly.
All right. Yes, you could use the cabin, Joe.
Thank you very much.
I made it up this summer.
I know.
I was there.
Turns
You
out.
worked it. Yeah. I didn't know you stayed some time. Yeah, I did.
Yeah, I'm just saying, probably some people that were hard to
Thank you very much. Appreciate
Joe,
it.
do you want a copy?
See you later.
Yeah.
Feel good?
Yeah, I'm doing what I'm doing.
Well, we have been here for an hour and 30-some minutes already. Do we want to continue on, or do we want to make a short night of it?
I have a question.
Okay.
Are you giving, some information to the, city council tomorrow? Are you recording our?
We can talk about that, because I really don't know what I'm to report. I guess I'm to say that this is what we defined our mission to be. Are we on the right track?
I think that's what we talked about, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what we definitely need to do.
Just
Okay.
let them know what we're doing, and should we quit and go home, or do
See
they
if
want
they
us
have
to
more
keep
direction.
doing it?
Yeah. Okay. All right, I would be glad to do that. And, but actually, I will let you guys decide, but it would kind of be nice, I think, to have an early Monday night out of here. But we do have other items on the agenda if we want to go that way. And actually, did everybody have an opportunity to look over that, the Silverton deal? And was there any comments, any thoughts about that?
I, for one, found that very helpful. And not that I didn't necessarily agree with everything that's in it.
I
but
think it's a good blueprint
Exactly.
for the types of problems that people around this area are encountering. Silverton's a little bigger than Pitkin.
Well, sure.
And that kind of thing.
It's a lot more commercial too.
Right,
with the narrow
right,
gauge
and it
all that.
has a structure to accommodate. So, yeah, but no, I found it very interesting. It's a good guideline.
Pete and John, I had a letter that I thought was kind of interesting. I know we're past the taking letter, but this one, if the group would want to hear it, I thought it's from a business owner in Pitkin. I don't know if this is something that you want me to read tonight, or?
Well, yeah, we had posted our public comment.
Why don't we read it during public comment?
So, if everybody, you say it's from a business?
Mhm.
Do you guys want to read the letter even though we were past the written public comment section?
Joe thinks it's got some valid points to it?
I think so.
So we have public comment on the agenda tonight, so I don't know why it couldn't
Well,
just
yeah,
come in then. but-
I have no
Okay.
problem with her reading the letter.
Okay, so will you put it down to item 7 under the public
That'd be
comment?
my,
Okay. All
I
right,
don't
is
think
that
it
okay?
Sure.
prevent us from doing that.
So if we're gonna move on and do some work, then we're gonna enter into a work session where we're gonna ask you guys to give us our space. We will follow up at the end of our work session with an opportunity for you to ask questions about the things that we've talked about. Okay? So the next item on the agenda then would be to discuss item 4 up there, which is the complaint process. And I think that the Silverton, that he actually had some stuff that addressed that. Does anybody want to start off with any comments about the complaint process and how to resolve complaints and how to manage them?
Jonathan, you can kind of piggyback it on. I'm trying to think of complaints that would not be nuisance related, or I mean, what would somebody make a complaint that's not a oh, a noise or a parking or whatever, trash. I mean, what complaints out there wouldn't fall under a sort of nuisance?
Well,
I mean, I don't think I don't think somebody can file a complaint and go, I don't like that black truck sitting
Well, I
there.
don't
but
think
it's,
that's
we
where
just
we're
talked about
headed
that,
that
I
way.
think occupancy. If someone sees that, you know, the place is designed for supposed to have 4 people and they have 40, then that's not a you know, a noise or anything like that. That's a kind of a violation of the short-term rental process.
Yeah, I think another one would be to, you know, if there's a burn ban going, and there were bonfires and things going on outside.
Well, I think the whole issue here is that to whom are they going to complain?
Yeah.
I think there's some indication in a lot of communities that the first point of complaint is the aggrieved, like a neighbor would contact the property manager and ask them if maybe they could go over and calm the people down. And then I think after that, then it becomes more of a matter of enforcement of town ordinances on behalf of the town council, which means basically the town council is gonna have to kind of get organized and either have enforcement or not. Because there's not much point in having a complaint procedure if there's not any
Nobody
enforcement
to
by the town.
complain to, yeah.
But I mean, I think that probably simply put, a complaint procedure for somebody aggrieved by something going on in a short-term rental would be, and I think it's kind of indicated in this Silverton deal, that adjacent property owners are notified who the property manager is and how to contact them. And I think if we're gonna have a complaint process, where your first recourse is contact the property manager, explain your concern. And if you're not satisfied within a reasonable time frame, and we can set that if we want to, a day or 12 hours or whatever you think. If you're not satisfied with, you know, the action of the property manager, then contact the town enforcement officer. And then that puts the onus of responsibility on the town to identify an enforcement officer. That's a pretty simple procedure. I don't think there's not much else we can do.
I think complaint process needs to be simple. You don't make that convoluted, and I think that's a good. Yeah, I know I brought it up before, but I don't know why the town would need to really go further than the nuisance officer already, unless
Well,
you're just worried about making too much.
Well,
work
here's
for
the
nuisance
problem,
officer.
if, like Joe said, if there's an occupancy
Well,
violation.
no, I'm saying the same person would handle that.
Well, yeah, the town's gonna have to
Yeah.
get that consolidated, yeah, absolutely.
So I think the first step should definitely be property manager or property owner, whoever's handling it. I mean,
Well, I think that's,
we're all
you
in
know,
agreement there.
and I guess it's just, you know, it's up to the patience level of the person who's offended by what's going on. Or we can specify that if it's not taken care of in, you know, 5 minutes. I mean, you know, if we could set a time, I mean, I don't know. but-
Now,
Because in fact, the enforcement officer, I would suggest, if somebody contacts the enforcement officer, his first question should be, well, did you talk to the property manager? When did you do that?
Yeah.
And then he would at least, that person would then at least have some reasonable understanding of what maybe was or wasn't really a problem.
Well, and, you know, kind of expand on that is if somebody went straight to the enforcement officer and they show up and go, yeah, there's a problem, and writes a ticket, well, the property owner goes, well, or, you know, manager goes, well, I never even had a chance to.
Well, I
review
agree,
the
no, I
problem,
agree,
so-
I think that's the deal. If the town's gonna establish a guideline, first complaint goes to the property manager, and I guess, you know, do you wanna set a response time? I mean, if it's noise, you don't wanna wait 12 hours. You know? But I mean, you know, I think the presumption would be that a responsible property manager would get over to that property post haste and say, hey, you know, come on, let's.
Well, I think if it comes down to, you know, a permit or a conditional use and they wanna have that, then yeah, their response time, you know, they're not gonna go, oh, I'll deal with it later, cause it comes back to impact them whenever it's renewed.
I think that's right. It's a chain of command, so to speak. But I do think that I believe that in the part of the complaint process, each property is going to have a file with the license and or permit or whatever.
Our own Better Business
It's
Bureau.
going to have a file, And that if a complaint goes to such, if the property manager doesn't properly handle it, and then a nuisance officer has to get filed, that should be noted and added to the file of the property, so that it can be discussed come the next renewal time. And I'm not thinking, one strike and you're out, but if there is a history of showing that this particular property has issues and it's documented on the file, that it would give the board concern or give them reason to consider whether or not they want to renew the license for the next period.
Well, I think documentation needs, you can't just go off of hearsay
Yeah.
or,
No, it needs to be something on the file.
And, I think what you'll see is the property manager will probably take care of it 99.9% of the time,
And
because
see,
usually it's just a matter of talking to somebody.
Yes, sir, and so long as the property manager handles it, then it never gets to the nuisance officer, so there's never anything to document on the file.
Are we kind of assuming all the property managers live here in Pitkin, or Parlin, or Ohio City? And somebody doesn't live in
Well, that's-
Oskaloosa,
I
Florida?
think that's one thing.
I don't think a property manager should be living outside of the property
Well,
she's managing, or he's managing.
Well, that's a question.
Well, but no, I thought the criteria for property manager
Was
was that they were
on-site.
on site within 5 minutes,
Yeah,
essentially.
okay.
5-minute contact time, so that they could be on site.
Now, somebody's gonna go on a vacation every now and again, but the thing about it is, if a property manager has to leave, they should leave a second to manage.
It doesn't,
So what you're saying is the property managers have to live within a
No.
5-minute
well,
area.
you can
of
designate someone to be a
Um,
property
Yeah,
manager.
yeah, but I'm saying the property
Well, here
manager,
from,
not the property
from
from
owner.
Silverton,
Yeah,
Silverton here, it says local contact person, all vacation rentals shall designate a local property manager, shall be available 24/7, must reside within 15-minute drive of the rental property to respond to tenant and neighborhood questions or concerns.
I like
So,
that,
I mean, so it's just something like that. I mean, it's pretty simple, straightforward.
And once again, I'm trying to think of the ones that I know of. I don't think that would even be a problem.
Well, I doubt it, but I mean, I think,
Here in town
we can
anyways.
specify 15 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever, but I think more importantly is,
immediate attention.
so let's say I call and complain about something going on next door. I call the property manager. The property manager comes over, things quiet down for a little bit, kind of like they do when your mother comes in the room, Then boom, that guy's gone. Starts up again. Do I call back the property manager, or then can I do you contact the enforcement officer then? I mean, that's kind of is it one chance for the property manager to control it? If it doesn't work, then you go to the enforcement officer? I mean,
I think so long as you make the attempt to contact the property manager first.
Yeah.
And
Because
if
I
it's
think,
not
yeah,
resolved, then it's up to you. Do you want
I think the enforcement officer
Call him
should find
again,
out if the
call
property
him.
manager been contacted. And probably enforcement officer, when he gets contacted, is in, call the property manager, get back over there and get this taken care of. I mean, that'd be the way to handle it.
Okay.
Do we need to put all of this in a motion?
Well, I think that we probably need to make notes of everything and
Be good to
then
have
make a notion on.
Are you making a motion?
Well, I was thinking, what we're talking about is the property managers is going to be the first person that we go to with a complaint for the neighbors. And then we'll have a nuisance officer that steps in if the property manager either doesn't show up or doesn't take care of the problem. Is that right?
In a timely
In
manner.
a timely manner.
That-
Right. Is that what we're thinking?
Right. And then we also need to define the property manager, what criteria they have to be able to meet.
Okay.
Within
let's see
15
what
minutes.
I think that was something we were doing on the administrative.
Were we?
talking
Okay,
about.
okay.
But I do think when
I
we
think
say
he's talking about
respond in a
response
timely manner, timely to one, so do we want to say,
15 minutes, 30 minutes?
I mean, I don't know. Looking at some of the letters we received, somebody said there ought to be a 30-minute response time. They've got 15-minute response time in
That's pretty
Silverton.
fast.
I was gonna say, I can't think of any situation right now, but if it was somebody living in Ohio City or Parlin, and they get a call at 11:30 at night, they have to wake up, throw clothes
Yeah.
on. It may not, and you're driving up here in the dark. I mean, yeah, it's probably great in Silverton that it can be 15 minutes, but I think, I'm not trying to drive, I mean, there needs to be a response time, but we need to be kind of
Well,
But
but,
shouldn't
but the
the
problem,
property
see,
manager
timely is
actually-
open to interpretation, and
Right.
just,
So define it.
Well, I mean,
we need to define it.
I know, but what if the property manager lived up in Quartz Creek Properties? It's not.
Well, we're gonna-
Pitkin, but it's. So I'm just saying, I think it.
Or if the person can't be here within 30 minutes, then they need to hire somebody that can be, to be their property manager within the,
Yeah.
either, Pitkin city limits or within a 30-minute radius. And that's their
A property
designated.
manager is able to delegate.
Yeah.
They can have deputies that are covering them. But there is be able to get a hold of someone.
Someone.
And someone to respond within a time frame. And I don't have a problem with 30 minutes at all. And Silverton's bigger than us and they got 15 minutes.
Well, 30 minutes is gonna seem like a long time.
Well, it
Yeah,
is
well,
for someone
It's gonna be eternity.
Yeah.
But
But if it's that big of a deal, you call the police,
Well, I was
If
gonna
you call-
say, if
It's some
I had a
crucial.
bonfire and kids drinking and
Yeah.
everything next to me at 11 o'clock at night,
Sure.
I can call the cops.
Sheriff, yeah.
I mean, if it's that bad, I wouldn't go to a property manager first. I would call the police.
But if you're sitting watching, I'm just saying 30 minutes seems like a long.
Yeah.
30
minutes
minutes
will
is a
seem
long
like
time.
a
I
time,
think
but
15 minutes
at the
is
same time.
more than reasonable in the Pitkin area.
Yeah. I just want to be,
Well,
I'm just trying to think worst case if somebody wakes up, gets a call in the middle of the night. I mean,
well, I understand what you're saying, Corey, but I do believe that if a person is going to go into the venture of wanting to manage and operate a short-term rental,
They gotta
they have to
cope
be
with
held
that.
accountable, and there has to be some responsibility. And, I mean, like Joe says, if your neighbors are making a bunch of noise, you don't want to have to wait a half an hour.
yeah.
I mean,
Do we penalize the neighbor to be overly fair to the property owner?
man.
And I don't think that we should do that.
so we want to have a complaint process that involves complaints being first filed with the property manager with the understanding that after 15 minutes, if the condition hasn't improved, then contact the enforcement officer. Is that what we're saying?
Well, I'd hate to be the enforcement officer.
Well, that's something that
No, I know.
certainly the town's gonna have to do that.
Yeah.
And we need to say something like Gwen was saying, if the severity of the incident is such that they need to call the sheriff.
I mean,
or
there are
whatever.
dangerous things,
Exactly.
that you
Don't
can't.
try to get a hold of property manager, get a hold of.
I mean, you don't call the property manager if the house is on fire next door. You call the fire department.
Well, okay, I think that what we want to do here is to, I mean, I think if it's somebody, if the person next door is getting beat up or something.
Yeah.
You call the cops. If it's a bunch of people talking loud and drinking a beer at a fire, then you call the
Yeah,
How long is it gonna take the sheriff's deputy to get up here?
Oh, at least an hour and a half.
Probably not.
Unless you put up the fire alarm. So, yeah, calling the cops wouldn't be first thing on anybody's list if you want something quick.
Okay, so we've got the property manager is the first step.
Yeah.
The second step, if the property manager does not remedy it within, did we say 15 or 30 minutes? What was?
He said
15.
15.
He has to respond, not
Yeah, I was
remedy.
gonna say.
Okay,
He has to
Yeah,
respond.
respond with them because depending on the complaint,
It
it
may take him an
long.
hour to remedy it.
Then the second call would then go to the nuisance officer. And at this point in the motion, or whatever we choose to vote on, I would like to see it put in there that it is mandated that the nuisance officer do a report and attach it to the file of the property.
Okay.
Is this the motion you're making?
Yeah, we're putting it all together. Now someone just has to read it.
Does the report and attaches it to what?
There should be a file on the
And
property.
and puts it in the file.
Yes, ma'am.
In the rental properties file.
Because they're gonna have a license, a permit, there's gonna be an application, somewhere this is gonna live in a file. And, so we file a report and put it in the file. Okay, so what's the next step? And pretty well.
That covers it. That's
So
one and
it's just
two.
And I think this is Gwen's motion, is that right?
Well, I
Yes.
started it.
Okay, well, you want to
If you'll read it to me, I'll repeat it.
Well, what I've got is that there's gonna be a complaint process. The first step in the process is to contact the property manager. And it is expected that the property manager would respond within 15 minutes. If that doesn't work, then the second step in the process would call the nuisance officer. And he would deal with it, she would deal with it. And that we would further require then that the nuisance officer file a report and make sure that it gets attached to the property's file.
Okay.
15 minutes might be a little bit unreasonable.
Well, I mean,
I don't
What
know.
is
I mean,
reasonable?
Well, if we give them 15, they take a half hour. If we give them 30, they take an hour.
Okay.
Okay? I mean, I think there's some, if they make a valid effort to respond. Now, do we need to say respond on site? Or
I don't think so.
Respond, how do you want this response to be?
Respond to the problem. I just leave it
Yeah, I don't
like
think you
that.
dictate that.
Sometimes they'll go over and talk to him, sometimes they'll call him up.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We're not telling them how they have to fix it, just work on fixing it.
okay. So were you able to get that in a motion form for Gwen?
Yeah, Gwen Matase moved that we have a complaint process, the first step of which would be to contact the property manager, who would be expected to respond within 15 minutes, and I'm not gonna add the part about it could be calling or it could be
Yeah,
showing up.
yeah.
The second step would be to call the nuisance officer, who would be mandated to file a report, an attached report to the short-term rental file.
I make that motion.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, so there's a motion that you just read by Gwen, seconded by Brad. Is there any further discussion that could be on this? So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, motion carried.
I'm sorry, in getting that together, who seconded that?
I did.
Brad.
You know what, that was a lot easier than parking, wasn't it? So shall we, I'll tell you what, it's 8:55. What do you guys want to do?
I wanna go home.
Well, let's do enforcement, because I got a real simple solution.
Okay.
Let's hear it.
Enforcement presumes that the enforcement officer is gonna write a citation, and it's gonna be referred to municipal court. So I think if this regulation ends up being written in the zoning regulation, the violation will be subject to penalty as provided in the zoning regulation.
Enforcement already town enforcement would already take care of it. I don't know that there needs to be a separate.
Well, no, that's what I mean. I don't think we really,
Yeah.
because the ordinances all specify what the violation penalty is, so as far as enforcement, just in accordance with appropriate or applicable town ordinance or code.
Okay, so,
I think, I like it.
I was gonna say, kind
So
of
we
looking
may
at
just put that as a footnote under the complaint paragraph. If enforcement becomes necessary, it shall be done in accordance with the town's ordinances and resolutions as applicable or whatever, or just something like that.
Yeah, I think it just needs to be a footnote. I mean,
Yeah.
I know it seemed probably like a good idea when we were making this
Yeah,
list,
yeah.
but now we're getting there and going, well,
okay.
why would we have a whole separate enforcement process for a short-term rental?
Okay, Pete, you want to restate your motion so Susie can get it? Unless
Well-
you
You
already
wanna
got
see
it?
what I wrote so far?
Yeah, what'd you say? Yeah.
I said,
Yeah, good,
if enforcement becomes necessary, it then needs to be handled as specified by the zoning code?
Well, no,
Just town
by the applicable town ordinance or resolution.
Cover it all.
Yes.
Town.
In other words, you know, the town, if it's wise, will try to recruit one person to be an enforcement officer for the leash law, the nuisance ordinance, the zoning code, on down the line. And so if that enforcement officer, after 15 minutes, gets called into a situation and feels he ought to write a citation, then he'll pick which ordinance applies, and,
Okay.
you know, and those all specify what the fine is and all that, or should.
Okay, so if enforcement becomes necessary, it will then be handled as specified by the applicable town ordinance or resolution.
I
Is
think
that
that's
good?
fine.
Yes.
Yep.
I second it.
Okay, so the motion was by Pete, seconded by Gwen. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Boy, that was a lot easier than part.
Let's leave number 6. I recommend we leave number 6 till next time.
I
Yeah.
would sure be glad.
I agree with that. It's gonna
Okay.
probably be a lot longer discussion than we think it will be.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what, let's open up for public comment. Okay, go ahead.
Well,
Pete.
I have a question of procedure for the committee. There are a couple issues we've talked about at previous meetings, and we passed some motions. And we passed some motions tonight. I feel that there, in my mind, at least a couple issues we probably ought to revisit and re-examine a little bit. And just want to wait until we get through this whole thing and then kind of have a summary.
I think so.
That's a
Vetting
good
session?
idea.
Yeah.
that's a
Yeah,
really good idea.
because we left vague and blank holes. For
Yeah.
instance, on the septic thing, you know,
Yeah,
approval.
I think
That
so.
we need to go back and revisit.
All right, so at this time, we'll go to public comments, and we're gonna let you do your piece as a public comment,
Okay.
okay? So is everybody agreeable with that?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, I just thought this was a good letter. And I've kept in touch with Gary and Becky George since we were friends with them. And I know they sent this, I think to the mayor, but I'm not sure who all, but he sent me a copy. So this is from Gary and Becky George, who own Quartz Creek Lodge. Just said, we felt it necessary to compose this letter concerning the recent discussion in Pitkin revolving around current and future zoning regulations. Although in our view, the outcome is self-evident. We would discuss each point in lengthy measures, but will attempt to be succinct. Enforcing current zoning laws and prohibiting short-term rentals on residential properties less than 30 days is the only plausible decision that should be made based on the following points. Every property owner who has purchased property in Pitkin was aware of the residential versus commercial zoning status of said property and all laws which pertain to it upon purchase. There should have been no surprises to what type of property they were purchasing. Residential property owners pay residential property tax, as commercial property owners pay a higher commercial property tax. There is and should be a higher cost in running a legitimate business. Businesses on zoned commercial property, besides paying higher property tax, also pay taxes on their sales/services to Pitkin, Gunnison County, and state of Colorado. They contribute to the community as a whole. Residential rentals contribute to their own personal bank accounts. The property owners who desire to rent their house on a short-term basis are not adversely impacted by doing whatever they want with their property, but their adjacent and nearby neighbors are personally impacted due to additional noise levels, parking issues, and the general safety of their families. If the tables were turned, would these property owners want their neighbors where they reside year-round to do the same to them? Highly unlikely. The town has a responsibility to its citizens first and foremost for public safety. As we are all aware, visitors to Pitkin bring their ATVs, etc., having them scattered throughout the town versus contained at either end of town on commercially zoned property is a definite safety concern. If property owners want to make extra money in the town of Pitkin, we personally know of a valid, properly zoned business for sale in the town's limits that welcomes visitors with their ATVs. It also benefits the town's checkbook and not just its own. The claim that there is no place to stay in Pitkin is unfounded. Outside of 1 week in July, we have vacancies every night. We have actually had people cancel their reservations with us, as one member of their party has come across a house in Pitkin they could rent rather than stay at our lodge. This has happened 3 times in the past couple of months, resulting in a loss of income to both the Valor business and the town. This is a lose-lose proposition across the board. We realize we are not there to defend our position, as many may refute the points made, but our hope is common sense. The legality of the current code and the decision to do the only right thing, regardless of any backlash, will prevail. Respectfully, Gary and Becky. So thanks for letting me read that.
Yes, Jess?
First of all, on this complaint process, there is stated zoning and nuisance complaint procedures already established for Pitkin. Now, item number 2, I would like every letter read that you have received in the public, just like Joe just did this one, please.
Well, that ain't gonna happen.
Well, then, where is the equality?
Huh?
Where is the equality?
Where is the inequality? I mean,
You have one biased statement read.
So you want us to read 15 other biased?
40, 60.
Well, why, we could, we could probably make copies of all these letters available to people,
Why
I
don't we
guess.
do
I mean,
that?
No, my point, no, I'm not bitching. What I'm saying is the equality or the lack of appearance of quality of input from both sides.
Well, Jesse, can I just ask you, would that be any different than me suggesting, since you were given the floor this evening, that we should argue, well, we ought to go get everybody else in town to come in here and have a chance to talk too?
Well, I'm here.
Well, isn't that the same thing? I mean, that's kind of nitpicking, isn't it?
No. This
Well,
is a public meeting. The
yes.
public was invited.
Well, okay, and I'm saying that, okay, we read a letter, you want us to read all the other letters.
Sure.
I'm saying, okay, before we have any more comments from you or anybody else here, I want to go gather everybody up in town and bring them into this meeting.
You
and
had
have
it
their
right. It's
comments.
posted.
Go, Pete.
Get them.
They should.
Yes.
You have one letter that is written, you have one letter
Read
that is now on tape.
Would you like us to read another letter? Let's just,
40-some other letters that are not on tape.
okay.
There is
Hang
inequality.
on, I got them right here,
This
okay?
is biased.
Okay. Yes, Candy?
Okay, before this gets too carried away.
Yes, ma'am.
I think, in my opinion, it was maybe inappropriate to read the letter. I appreciate what the Georges had to say.
Yes.
But you all did have a deadline that your letters had to be submitted to the committee and read by the committee by 5 o'clock on Thursday, so you all can meet on that Friday.
Yes, ma'am.
So this seems kind of inappropriate, because I mean, can we just, anybody else that wants to send a letter in, I'm sorry you missed the deadline, but go ahead and submit
Let's
it.
have another
It'll be
meeting.
read. I mean, that's kind of, I think, where some of this might be going.
Okay. All right, well, yes, Rand?
This letter was actually sent to the town, not to this committee. I don't know why it's.
No, just because I'm friends with them.
Yeah,
so
but I mean, it
just-
was sent.
That's
It
biased.
was sent to Nancy,
That's
and
biased.
Nancy,
Okay.
it will be probably, it's going to the town, not, it didn't come to this.
For God's
committee.
sake, we don't want any
Take the
bias
next
coming in
meeting
this
and read
process.
every damn letter.
All right.
They had the
Yes, you
deadline
can.
to
Do you have a bias? Do you have a bias?
Please speak.
I have a bias against unbiased.
What's that?
Hey,
I'm for
Corey.
equality.
Excuse
I'm
me.
not for preferential treatment.
Come on, let's.
I'd like to
Well, I'm
remind-
angry. This is
Come
unjust.
Okay, ma'am, will you please be quiet? Corey?
I'd like to remind everybody here, we are neighbors. We're all acquaintances and friends. Please be professional and polite in your responses, and that goes for people sitting up here too. It's been like this several meetings that there's been people on both sides extremely rude, and we need to remember that we're all neighbors here. I don't see anybody here that's not, somewhat related, whether they own property, they live here, whatever, and so we need to be polite and professional in our responses.
I
There
don't
doesn't need to
care.
be people raising their voices and yelling. I mean, it's 2 meetings now. It gets pretty ridiculous on
Well-
both sides of the table. So,
Okay.
Let's have another meeting and we'll read every letter, all 40 or 45 of
43
them
or
we
44,
have.
yeah.
If you do that, are you going to identify from whom they are sent?
Why not?
Well, then I'd suggest that we make those available for people to come if they'd like to see them, have them, get them and read them themselves.
What we can do, if we'd like to put the letters up, is I can print the letters out, and we can just make a book of the letters, alphabetical
I've
book
got
of
it
the
right
letters.
here.
Why not have it recorded though?
Pardon?
Why could it not be read aloud and recorded like the Georges?
I got no problem
We
with
can
it.
do that. And-
Well, let's do it now and get it
Let's
over
do it
with.
now.
We'll be here until about 10:30, but let's
Now,
get
we're
it
gonna
done.
we're gonna do names? Or
John,
we
let
gonna
me
get
put it this
people-
way, it's not gonna get recorded. It's not gonna get recorded, because that will die, or that will die before we read
Well,
letters.
let's have it at the next meeting.
I'm just saying, another meeting would probably be prudent if we're gonna
Or
read
go
all the
through as
letters.
many as you can until it stops.
They're gonna stop at different times, is what I'm saying.
How much time do we have?
Geez, I don't know, probably maybe 20 minutes, I don't know, it's hard to
Well,
say.
let's see what we can do
Yeah.
in 15 minutes then. You want to?
I just
All right.
prefer to do it in a separate meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, I prefer,
Pardon?
to do it in a separate meeting too,
Yeah,
but that's,
I mean, it's,
if
Well, we got 43. It's gonna take a while.
I know, so have a separate meeting and do them all at once, it's
Yeah.
9:06.
And can we
Well,
have just a chairman at that meeting?
That's what I
reading the
say,
letters?
let's just have one person
No.
sit here in front of it and read
Prob-
it.
We're gonna have
Probably
to
not.
divide these up and we each
Yeah.
read a few.
sure.
Yeah, because it's, the way that I have them in here is the way they chronologically appeared in my inbox. Now, that may not have anything to do with the chronology of the world, but that's the way they show it.
That's the way it works
No,
with
that's-
your box.
Would it be okay if we read, each one of us took 5 letters and all read them at the same time?
No.
Would that help? We'll get it done quicker?
John?
Yes.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Are all those letters from either property owners or residents?
No,
Now,
Or are some of them from stakeholders?
some of them are from stakeholders, some of them are from relatives. There are several letters that represent the same household.
some are from, long-term visitors to the area.
Yeah, it's
If
just,
I go to Disney World occasionally,
You could write a letter to us.
yeah, and
You know,
I have to
One,
maybe
well,
make
if
sure
if we're
they
gonna,
make all the right decisions.
well, let me ask a question, if I may, of those who, understandably, perhaps it was inappropriate to read the letter from the Georges. However, let me point out that I think it was the second or third, maybe it was the third meeting, because I was finally here at a meeting. You went through all the letters and paraphrased, and we all had copies of them.
yeah.
And all of those comments that came from all those letters were discussed openly in this meeting. They weren't read verbatim, and that's what formed this outline.
That's right.
Now, do you agree with that?
Yeah, can I expand on it though?
Yeah.
So, you know, when we put the notice up, I think I just maybe took it down, it was, you know, it was not, hey, give us your opinion whether you're for or against short-term rentals.
Yeah.
It was, give us suggested guidelines for short-term rentals. Well, we unfortunately received several letters where people just said, I'm against it. Well, that's not what we asked.
Well, we had some that said it was for it,
Yeah, but we received several
But I guess what
that
I'm
had
saying is-
guidelines.
we, in effect, we went through all those letters at this meeting several weeks ago. And I just question if it's really necessary to.
And I have a question, I'm not sure I understand why this is an issue. Because what we're trying to put together the recommendations.
Yeah.
This has nothing to do with the recommendations at all.
Well, I agree, but some people here would have a different opinion, so I guess.
I would think this letter is gonna be read at the town meeting tomorrow.
No.
Yeah, that
Well-
letter was actually sent to Nancy.
Okay, but that's not the point. The point
Last
is
week.
that
Yeah.
Oh.
these
Well, then why would
people
the
are
committee have to-
Saturday, I know she had it by
Saturday,
Saturday.
Bec-
And it's, I think it's supposed to be with all those letters that people sent to the town
Still, it's.
a couple months ago.
Well, I just thought it was a good.
I don't think
Well,
that letter was
but
part
remember
of
this, that
this
I asked the
committee.
panel if they wanted to hear it. Yes, Jess.
Can we just strike that letter tonight that was read? Because it will be read at the council meeting again, correct?
Can you
I
delete
don't
it?
know, we
And
don't know.
simplify
Nope,
this.
because I get.
We haven't read any of the other ones.
Keep
Wait,
going,
wait a
Jesse.
minute.
Well, you would
Wait a
be.
minute, what if, all right, I make a motion that we request, and I'm saying this to the camera, We request that when Corey gets ready to post this video of this meeting, that he delete that segment where Joe read that letter.
There's too much in it, too much liability for me. I'm sorry. I mean, you can laugh if you want, but I've already been accused, not accused, but people have made snide comments. Oh, well, he could edit the video. So no way, shape, or form am I cutting anything out of that video.
I'd make a motion that we strike from the minutes of our meeting, which are not represented by this video, the reading of that letter from the Georges.
Okay, I got a motion on the floor to strike it from the minutes.
Yeah.
Did you-
Is there a
Yeah,
second?
no,
I
I'll
just
second
wrote.
that.
Okay, it's seconded by Jeff.
I have a copy of
How do you
it.
strike
and I
it?
don't have
Ladies,
Well, that's what I'm curious. I mean, ultimately, this was read in public comment. You don't strike anybody else's. I think, I'll admit, I think we went about this the wrong way.
well,
But let me ask as part of discussion on the
And
motion
I don't think
I
trying to
made.
hide it or
well,
strike it
I
is
don't
the
think
right.
we're trying to
All
hide
right,
it.
well,
We're
do
trying to
you
appease.
want to come here Wednesday night, for example, and spend 3 hours reading 45 letters?
If that's what makes
Do you
it
think
seem
that's
fair,
necessary for the committee to accomplish its task?
I don't
I
think
don't
that it
either.
does, but if that's what makes, if there seems to be an appearance of a bias on this and that's what it takes, then yeah, I'll be up here for 3 hours on Wednesday. You name the time and place.
Okay, Kathleen,
Well, here's the thing, I think that unfortunately it has the appearance of being biased. And you did paraphrase the other letters that were sent via a deadline in a timely manner. But you only paraphrased them. This particular letter got its entirety read. It has a certain flavor to it. It is definitely a bias. So it's only fair and equitable that all the other letters then be thoroughly, completely read so that all the biases are exposed. So that we see that the committee is not just being influenced or swayed by one particular untimely sent letter.
well, go ahead, Joe.
But I don't understand, the letter had nothing to do with recommendations for the determination of guidelines
Yeah.
for short-term rentals.
We
The
don't
letter
know
is
that.
the letter is meaningless from
We
that
don't know
perspective. And many of the other letters that we received
Yeah.
were similar.
Yeah.
And so the fact that that was read, to me, means nothing. There's
Then all
nothing,
the other letters should be
there's
read.
there's
That's
nothing
only
there
fair.
that we
only
haven't
fair.
already seen that we set aside.
Yes, Susan.
Would you be happy if just, since one letter that was biased was read out loud in public, would you be happy if a letter with another bias were read?
I think they should all be read. That's fair and equitable.
Well, it's up
You
to
give
you.
preferential
That is
treatment to
totally
one
ridiculous.
I think it's a
letter.
waste of
I
time.
That is not right.
Waste of time.
That is a complete waste of time and totally ridiculous. I think we can make copies of those available to those who'd like to see them and let them read them, because we don't
Then
want to
that
spend
one should
3
have been-
hours reading
Then
them.
yeah, that one should have been treated the same way, but you
Well,
guys,
guess
you
what?
guys
It
messed
wasn't.
up.
Guess
So
what?
now you should read all the letters.
Okay, then, yes, Jazz,
That's,
we're gonna wind
Did
this
you get a
down
second on
pretty
your
quick.
motion, Mr. President?
Go ahead, sir.
Did you get a second on your
No.
motion? Okay,
No.
then, well, if you had, I'd just like for you to vote on it and go home.
Yeah, well, but then it's not gonna happen that way.
Okay.
So, I'll tell you what I will do is that, I, for one, I mean, we did go through all of the high points, all of the recommendations that we had asked for. There was a lot of resumes. That was more about, I've lived here this long and this or that, and I think that's why my opinion possibly has more value than another guy's opinion. But the reason that I asked this panel if they wanted me to read the letter, because this was actually a letter that I was told came from a business, which is a little different perhaps than just somebody who is living in a residential area. So that was why that I did that. I polled the panel. They said read it, so that's why we did. I'm sorry that it offended some of you. It's certainly not the intent of me or anyone else on this panel to show any kind of prejudice. I think that we have made every effort to be fair and open. And so it is not my desire to sit here and read another 44 letters. Okay? Yes, Bob?
Could I have gotten up and offered my opinion about this in the public comment, just like the letter?
Yes.
Yeah.
Or would, and then would it have been unfair because I stood up and offered my opinion?
No.
Probably not. I don't see why.
Then I don't see the difference.
And we did do it during the public comment section. Yes, Candy?
Well, I mean, you were just talking about reading a letter from a business owner. I'm a business owner, and I sent a letter in.
Would you like me to read yours?
My no, that, not unless you're gonna read them all. But my letter was not, I am for short-term rentals or I'm against them. My thing is, if this committee is formed to do guidelines for short-term rentals, these were my suggestions. My letter does not say whether I'm for or against.
And that's absolutely right, and that is the intent of this committee. The direction of this committee was to not have anything to do with who likes it, who don't like it, who wants it, who don't want it. It's simply to establish some recommended procedures and regulations that we in turn pass to the zoning board, that they go through and in turn pass to the town board.
But this letter from the Georges did not give any guideline suggestions. It just said why they were against short-term rentals.
And if the Georges were here and not in Alaska, I'm going to go to what Bob mentioned. They could have stood up and made that statement.
Well, didn't they have adequate time, just like the rest of us? Didn't they have the deadline within which to submit their input on this short-term rental issue? Why is it that they're an exception now? They get to be heard and considered after a deadline to submit commentary.
Oh. Suggestion.
Can we make a motion, I'm just, a matter of procedure, can we make a motion to just, okay, it was read and we ignore it? I mean, it's like, kind of like a judge when he tells the jury to ignore, a certain part of
I
testimony.
made that
or
motion
something.
earlier.
Yeah, that's the one.
We strike it from the record of the minutes.
Yeah, well then,
I mean, I don't think I think there's danger in striking it from the minutes or deleting it from the video, because what happens if somebody a year from now goes, oh, well, why was that missing? What were they trying to hide? That's not our intent, obviously, but I think it's public comment. I don't think anybody hears. It's not part of our goal.
exactly, it's irrelevant to what we're trying to do here.
All right. But what if we allow in the public comment area people to submit letters, and we will read it, as if they couldn't be here and sat in the chairs? Would that suffice?
That's what you had there, though.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what, we're
So many
running
people couldn't be here and
way
they did
too long,
submit
and we're
letters.
beating a pretty dead horse at this point. Rand?
Like I said earlier, that letter, as far as I know, is intended to the town board.
Well,
And it has nothing to do with this
well,
committee.
it doesn't, but the
'Cause
fact
it's
of the
not-
matter is that it was presented here.
And it was sent to the town board. Nancy got it Saturday.
All right, Jess, we're
I'm
winding down
sorry I
here, sir.
compared it, but I appreciate what Pete and Joe are saying. It does not pertain to your issue. It's read, it's done, it's over.
That's right.
I know we're all ready to go home. I just want to reinforce the point that there's not anything being hidden up here, and like we said, the overwhelming amount of letters were what we asked for, guidelines, recommendations. There were the few that were, we don't want them, or we want them, but I think everyone here is in agreement in the essence of time in the previous meeting. We did just kind of paraphrase and go through them, but we did go through every letter here at the meeting, and okay, well, here were the ideas from this letter, and here's some that were not covered in that letter. So it's not that we're hiding anything. It was just done in the essence of time, was to paraphrase the guidelines and recommendations versus reading the same recommendation from 10 different letters.
I would say that if people are concerned about what transpired here, which was probably an error on our part as a committee, I would suggest that you go and find the video of that meeting when John sat with all those letters and watched very carefully the fact that he did go through all the letters received, and we paraphrased them. And then I would suggest after you have done that, if you still feel there's a need for each of these letters to be read publicly at this meeting, you approach this committee, and perhaps the committee might consider doing that.
I've already watched the previous video.
Yeah, so is there any need for you to sit here and hear all these letters reread again?
And it was the May 29th meeting, and
Yeah, I
I
mean-
wanted to see that.
Well,
Let's all be reasonable. Corey's got a point. We are
obviously,
neighbors.
you
We
know,
should try to
my
get,
bone to pick here is that I feel this was not the place for that letter at this time.
I think we've all acknowledged
We all
that.
agree with that.
I just thought it was something that people wanted to hear.
It's
since
your
was my
fault,
business.
Joe.
It's my fault.
What I would suggest is that everybody here go to town council tomorrow evening, listen to the letter again, and see if it had any bearing on what was discussed here this evening.
So will it actually be read tomorrow? I mean, when something is addressed to the
We haven't
mayor,
read
does that
any of
mean it's
them.
gonna
I
be
mean,
read?
they've-
Probably
It's
not.
We've
emailed
got them
to
all
all
forwarded
trustees.
to us, but I don't think any have been read at the meeting. Because
So-
it really hasn't been discussed at the meetings too much for or against.
Are we ready for this?
I'm ready for those.
I make a
mandatory-
motion that we adjourn.
Can we discuss that?
By all means.
I think you need to write it out.
Yeah, we got a motion on the floor.
Wait, have a discussion. When is the next meeting?
The next meeting is gonna be next Monday at 7. So we have a motion on the floor
What are we-
by
wait.
Glenn, seconded by Martin.
Pete's not ready
What are
yet.
we gonna talk about? Number one?
Well, we're either gonna talk about number one or
Are we
read
gonna
a whole bunch of letters.
Start all over.
Oh, six. 6 and 1, okay. Sorry.
That's okay.
I'm trying to keep.
No, I know, no, that's
I
fine.
wanna keep, I'm gonna stall until.
We were
Let's
just
just
getting
do
on.
You made a motion, I seconded.
John?
Okay, there's a motion on the floor
Corey seconded the motion.
by Glenn, seconded by Corey, that we adjourn. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, same sign.
See.
No.